Welcome to the Tuesday, June 13th, 2023 regular closed session meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. I am participating via teleconference. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan?
Present.
Master mute all the mics. Director Coleman?
Present.
Director McIntosh?
Here.
Director Linney?
Here.
Director Patterson?
Present.
Director Young?
Here.
President Katz?
Here. We will take public comment first. If members of the public are online and wish to make public comment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Comments on non-agenda items will be heard at the beginning of the meeting. Comments on agenda items will be heard when the item is up for consideration, which is also at this time. Madam Secretary, are there any hands for public comment?
I have one hand for public comment online, Yvette Rivera. And there is something weird. So I don't see any microphones for my panelists. Give me one moment. Can you make me the co-host? Thank you. Yvette Rivera, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Thank you, Risha.
Your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you. I see the Saji Pierce and Ariel Bland lawsuit is on the agenda for the closed board session. For those curious about what's going on with the Saji Pierce and Ariel Bland civil rights trial in San Francisco, according to the old schedule I passed out last month, the trial should be in jury deliberations this week. Sadly, I missed a lot of the trial because I'm in South America, but you can bet that I'll be requesting transcripts of the testimony of Ariel Bland, Saji Pierce, Craig Spencer, Corrine Darrow, Derek McDonald, Risha Cole, just to name a few, so I can read that testimony at future board meetings. My reading of these types of public documents at public meetings is all about me pulling back the invisibility cloak on the discrimination and retaliation that happens at EBMUD, right under the nose of this board of directors. I yield.
Thank you.
Are there any additional?
We have no other hands for public comment.
Thank you. We will now convene to conference room 8 to discuss closed session agenda items. We are scheduled to return for our regular meeting at 1:15 p.m. Welcome to the Tuesday, June 13th, 2023 regular business meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. We will receive reports from this morning's Planning and Legislative Human Resources Committee item under item 17. For the roll call.
Director Chan?
Present.
Let me turn the mic down just a little bit. Director Coleman?
Present.
Director Linney?
Present.
Director McIntosh?
Here.
Director Patterson?
Here.
Director Young?
I am here.
President Katz?
Here. And for the record, I am participating via teleconference. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There are no announcements from closed session. Vice President Lisa McIntosh will chair the remainder of this meeting. Please proceed, Vice President McIntosh.
He has now handed the meeting over to Vice President McIntosh, and she will continue the meeting. Thank you, President Katz.
Thank you, President Katz. We have two presentations before us. The General Manager will begin with number 1.
Thank you, Director McIntosh. So for over 50 years, the National Minority Supplier Development Council has served as a growth engine for certified minority business enterprises to advance economic equity. The Western Region Minority Supplier Development Council continues that charge by creating connections between minority business enterprises, corporations, and the public sector and serving as an advocate for impacted minority communities in Northern California, Nevada, and Hawaii. With us today is Mr. Cecil Plummer, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Western Region Minority Supplier Development Council, to present the district's contract equity program and its contract equity administrator, Beverly Johnson, with honors from their annual Excellence in Supplier Diversity Awards.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And or good afternoon, I guess I should say. Oh, we got awards. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today to present the awards. The Western Regional Minority Supply Development Council has been serving in Northern California since 1977. And we have the opportunity to see a great number of organizations participate in the work of bringing economic equity through their supply chains to small and medium-sized and large businesses owned by BIPOC entrepreneurs. We see a lot of companies doing that work, but sometimes you see companies and people who, to use a boxing metaphor, punch above their weight. So it is my honor today to present several awards on behalf of the personnel and the organization of EBMUD. First, I'd like to say on behalf of the Women's Business Enterprise Council, Pacific, for the Pacific region, who couldn't be here today. They had 2 awards that were unable to be presented in previous years. The Agency Advocate of the Year Award for 2021 to EBMUD as an organization. Congratulations, yes. And we also have an individual award for the Agency Advocate of the Year for 2021 as well to Beverly Johnson. And due to the pandemic, we, WRMSDC, the Western Region Minority Supply Development Council, was unable to present our 2020 award to EBMUD for Local Corporation of the Year. Congratulations, EBMUD. And just to show the tradition of excellence, you may have heard we talked about 2020, we've talked about 2021, we are now going to talk about 2023. And it is my pleasure to present the 2023 Unsung Hero Award from the Western Regional Minority Supplier Development Council to Beverly Johnson of EBMUD. I have a lot of hardware that I have to bring over here.
And
I couldn't just make one trip.
is someone coming down from the board for the board award?
Yeah, we'll need a little help with this hardware and the photo op for the photography, of course. We have so many, I have to see. That's quite an array. That's quite an array. So let's go in date order. We're going to start in 2020 with the Local Corporation of the Year. 2021, the Agency Advocate of the Year for the EBMUD as well. You want to hold two?
We need some more board members down there.
And now for the individual awards, 2021 from the Women Business Enterprise Council Pacific to Beverly Johnson. And most recently, the 2023 Unsung Hero Award to Beverly Johnson. I just want to say real quick, we get to work with companies like Google, Apple, Meta, JP Morgan Chase. The reason we give out this award is because sometimes it's easy for those big names to kind of eclipse the other organizations and the other professionals. But when we think of the person who does the most with what she's got to work with and punches just as hard as the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, Beverly Johnson, thank you so much for everything you do.
Okay, thank you, Cecil, and I just want to thank you in terms of the growth and thing that the council has put in place and what you're doing. Am I supposed to be? Okay. I forgot that I had to be visible. Look, unsung and unseen, see, that's what I was hoping for. But I do want to thank Cecil and the great work he's been doing with the council. He's been there, he told me now about
7.5.
7.5 years. I told him he has a ways to go because I'm here 36 years. So look, he's still a newbie. But the thing is that the council is doing a lot of good work in terms of promoting minority business enterprise, in terms of development, in terms of actually getting them jobs and getting them contracts here in the local area. And so I'm so proud to be here with the district supporting those efforts. And so even though I got two, you got two, but know that all of these are on behalf of the efforts that the district has, and I take pleasure in representing the district out in the minority and women business community. And so thank you, and I look forward to your continued support.
We'll help you carry some of this hardware. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plummer. Congratulations, Beverly.
Let me just say from here that Beverly, we know that it takes tremendous leadership to be able to get this kind of recognition, and also it takes a team, a full team. And we thank all the people on that you work with and have made this possible. But clearly, it takes a leader to bring a team along. So thank you so much for your leadership on this.
Thank you. One more thing. Hold on one second.
Just quickly, only because I forgot to, I talked about the support of the board, but also in terms of the people I work with in my office. I see Joy is here. I think Carlin was able to be here, but just know that we are, and Jean is our new addition, that we are a hardworking little group that hopefully will continue to deliver positive results for the district. And thank you. So thank you to staff as well.
Okay, moving on next, it is my pleasure to introduce an impressive young student today, Serafin Slaga, who is one of the 2023 winners for the middle school category for the Alameda County Science and Engineering Fair. Serafin lives in Richmond and attends the School of Madeline in Berkeley. EBMUD is one of the annual sponsors for the fair, which was held in March of this year. Serafin will make a brief presentation of his award-winning science project, A Natural Method of Removing Microplastics. Utilities understand the challenges with addressing microplastics, so it's heartening to see that today's young minds are aware of the problem and are already looking for solutions. The Science and Engineering Fair recognizes projects that explore innovative ways to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer for all. Serafin?
Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about the natural method of removing microplastics. So we know that microplastics are an environmental problem because they contaminate our water supplies and cause us health issues.
Sarah, can you give us one moment? We want to share the screen with the public. Give us one moment.
It's not on. Hold on.
Share at the bottom.
I can do it.
know,
I
the
can do it
crazy
from here.
mouse.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so as I was saying, so the purpose of my experiments were to exhibit a natural method of removing these microplastics, and what I found is that these methods work and are efficient. So, as we know, microplastics are plastics that have been degraded into microscopic pieces of plastics, and the way people are getting rid of them right now are by using man-made chemicals that act as flocculants, which clump all of these microplastics together and make them easier to extract from water. However, these methods are toxic and wasteful. So scientists have been trying to find a more natural way of removing these microplastics, And I've been researching polysaccharides and been testing them. And they've seen that these work just like the man-made flocculants. So my hypotheses are that these microplastics will work well and efficiently. That the plant with the most polysaccharides will clump the most microplastics, and that there will be a ranking order. The plant with the most polysaccharides clumping the most microplastics, and the plant with the least polysaccharides clumping the least microplastics. So for my materials, for my polysaccharides, I use okra, tamarind, fenugreek, and flaxseed. I have my freshwater and saltwater, of course, and plastic beads to simulate microplastics. So for my procedure, I grounded up my polysaccharides individually. I took 5 bowls and each filled them with 150 beads. And then I put my polysaccharides into the respective bowls and left one without polysaccharides to be a control. And I drained the water after waiting a certain amount of time and recorded the amount of beads in a cluster and had this as a trial, and then transferred this data to the slides. So this is my experiment. As you can see, there's no clumping without any without any polysaccharides here. And with okra, you can see some residue clumping all these beads together. And you can see a little bit of that with tamarind and fenugreek and flaxseed, but not as much as okra. And this is 5 minutes in fresh water, but on a graph. So these dots and triangles represent a trial, and these black lines here represent the average amount of beads in a cluster. So as you can see here, okra has clumped about the most microplastics and has an average around 19 beads. Tamarind here has an average of about 4, fenugreek has an average about 7, and flaxseed has an average of 13. And there's variability because you're not going to get the same amount of beads in each clump. So this is 5 minutes in salt water. As you can see here, okra has noticeably improved in clumping all these microplastics from going to about 20 to all of them after 5 minutes. And tamarind, fenugreek, and flaxseed have also improved, just not as much as okra. So this is 20 minutes in salt water. We extended the time limit and found my ranking order hypothesis to be true, as okra having the most polysaccharides clumping the most microplastics, and flaxseed with the least polysaccharides the least microplastics. As you can see here, okra has clumped all of these microplastics together, and tamarind has also noticeably improved very well, just given more time. And fenugreek, given more time, has stuck all these microplastics to the bottom of the container, even though it has a low amount of polysaccharides, and I will get into that later. So from what I found, these polysaccharides are an effective way of clumping all these microplastics together. Okra was the most efficient in clumping all these microplastics in both freshwater and saltwater. And saltwater is shown to improve all of these microplastic clumping rates. And tamarind was also increased, just given more time in saltwater. And again, fenugreek was able to stick all these microplastics to the bottom of the container, even though it doesn't have a lot of polysaccharides with it. And what does this all mean? It means that microplastics are an efficient and natural way of removing microplastics, and that saltwater is shown to improve the microplastic clumping rates. Fenugreek was able to stick all these microplastics to a bottom container, and I'm thinking that something else is helping it do that, as it's not rich in polysaccharides. And what I think is helping it do that is monosaccharides. And I'm hoping that this research can be used by people to help find a more efficient way of removing microplastics. And what I could do for the future is maybe I could increase the time limit so the plants that are low in polysaccharides could maybe clump more microplastics. And I could also test different kinds of salts because I know that salts have ions and these ions are charged. So I'm guessing that different salts will have different charged ions and will affect the microplastic clumping rates. And maybe I can test monosaccharides because I know fenugreek is rich in that. And maybe I can see which plant can stick all these microplastics to bottom container the fastest. And I would also love to test the biodegradability of these plants to see which can separate themselves from the microplastics as soon as they're taken out of the water. And maybe I can also have a wider template of polysaccharide plants so I could prove my point even further. Any questions?
I really appreciate you sharing this really incredible research that you've done. I certainly hope your future plans includes working in our industry, and maybe if we're lucky, you'll even work here at EBMUD. I do know that Director McIntosh wants to say a few words and also present you with their certificate of accomplishment as well as your winning prize.
Thank you, Clifford. And Seraphin, thank you so much for your presentation. I mean, it's really thoughtful and thought-provoking. So we're really proud of you. And I understand there were over 100 presentations in the middle school category. So getting first prize is amazing and something that your school and parents should be very, very proud of. I get the biggest bragging rights, and I can say I have one of the brightest young minds living in my ward, which is Ward 1. I represent Richmond and most of West County. However, Andy Katz, my fellow board member and president of the board, also has bragging rights. He's in Ward 4, and that's where your school is located, correct? Madeline School? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes.
All right. So thank you. Andy and I both get bragging rights. We haven't had a science fair winner in our service area for a long time now. So what you've achieved is significant. Now, for the fun part, the presentation of the check and certificate on behalf of EBMUD and the Alameda Science and Engineering Fair. On behalf of all of the sponsors of the Alameda County Science Fair, I am very proud to present you with a certificate and a check for $400 for your accomplishment. I bet you want the check first.
Thank you.
I would. Okay, turn around and let's take a picture. Thank you. Thank you so much. Very proud of you.
Josh, before you leave, it was an awesome presentation you made, and I've been working on microplastics with the San Francisco Estuary Institute for nearly a decade now. And it's one organization, I can give you my card, you should make the presentation there, and they may have an opportunity to help give you the needed impetus, cash or whatever, supplies, to do your further testing. So if you'd like, I'll give you my card, and hopefully you can do, thank you, get some time and funding to be able to go further with your hypothesis.
So, thank you very much. And thank you for you guys must be so proud of him. Thank you for everything it took for you to get him where he is right now. All right, so we go on to public comment. If members of the public are online and wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Comments on non-agenda items will be heard now. Comments on agenda items will be heard when the item is up for consideration. Madam Secretary, are there any public comments online?
I have one hand online for public comment. Yvette Rivera, is your comment on an agenda or non-agenda item?
Non-agenda item.
Which item?
Non-agenda item.
Non-agenda item, okay. We'll take
Yeah.
that comment now. Your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you. This morning I spoke about the Saji Pierce and Ariel Bland civil rights lawsuit. And according to the old schedule, the trial should be in jury deliberations this week. Sadly, I missed quite a bit of the trial because I'm in South America, but I'll be requesting transcripts of the testimony of Ariel Bland, Saji Pierce, Craig Spencer, Corrine Darrow, Derek McDonald, Risha Cole, just to name a few, so that I can read their testimony at future board meetings. My reading of these types of public documents at these meetings is all a part of me pulling back the invisibility cloak on the discrimination and retaliation that happens at East Bay MUD, right under the nose of this board of directors. At the last board meeting, an East Bay MUD propaganda film was played, and Sophia Skoda said that the employees usually stay 20 to 30 years at East Bay MUD. I countered Ms. Skoda's comments by saying that was no longer true. I know that April Chan wasn't at the East Bay MUD last year when Eric Larson and Thomas Kelly provided public comments at the Cultural Equity Workshop. I really hope she gets a chance to review that film. It's on YouTube. Thomas Kelly retired last month after working almost 20 years. In honor of Thomas Kelly, I'm going to play 1 minute, the tail end of his comments at the Cultural Equity Workshop from last year, and an additional comment by Eric Larson.
When it's not proven that this has happened, then there's retaliation. If you don't want to bring any complaints against retaliation, because you have to go through it again. I have pride. I've gotten angry. I have Black people say stuff like, hey man, you gotta be careful. And all I want to do, you guys, as the East Bay MUD employee, I want to learn to do my job the best I can. I want to go to work, and then I want to go home. I want to go home safely. I want to hold my head up proud to be an American. I don't like to hear the word East Bay MUD, we are family. Because some people use that as a way to harass you and to make sure that you don't say certain things.
Thomas, your 3 minutes concluded, so if you could wrap up your comments.
Hope that I got through, and I hope that there will be some changes. I hope that there will be interactive training.
Thank you, Risha. Thank you, board. There is a culture of retaliation at East Bay MUD, and there is awareness and exhaustion of minorities, especially Black and Latinx employees. And it's time for the district to move beyond talk to implementation. We don't need more resolutions. We need actions here at the district. Again, I commend the district, the general manager, the board, and the Winters Group at this endeavor. I hope that it is successful and fosters change here at the district.
Yvette, your 3 minutes have concluded. If you could wrap up your comments.
Thank you, Risha. I just want to say that the Winners Group was never brought back. The Winners Group had the most amazing tool to identify the issues and to address the issues. But Mr. Moten has decided to handle this issue on his own or with his group. I hope that changes. Thank you. I yield.
We have one additional hand for public comment. I'm going to see if it's on an agenda or non-agenda item. Kelly A., are you speaking on an agenda or non-agenda item?
Non-agenda.
Okay, your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you. The district has assembled 3 large stockpiles of trench soil, and one of them is in Castro Valley. The people in Castro Valley are a little bit upset about having a soil removal operation going on, scheduled to take several weeks of high-intensity truck trips. But the problem is bigger than that. This district has 750,000 cubic yards of volumetric capacity to stockpile this dirt. And the district claims in its slides to only produce 50,000 cubic yards per year. So that's what, 15 years of soil capacity, soil stockpiling capacity. That's a residence time of 15 years. That's kind of a lot. And if you know, from the point of view of Kanban, just-in-time manufacturing concepts, you know, these kind of private sector innovations where people in the private sector do believe in efficient manufacturing and minimum handling, low inventories, all that kind of stuff. It seems like your district is doing the opposite when you have 15 years of stockpiling capacity going on. And then also, you know, these things only come up when it's time to empty the stockpile. Every year, every month, every week, whatever, these stockpiles are getting filled, but they get filled under the radar because you get little truckloads, small amounts of truckloads of dirt going up and dumping the trench soil somewhere. And then only during the intensive off-hauling operation, all of a sudden it becomes a political problem. So this is what's happening out there, and this is why the people in Castro Valley, of course, are upset, and they don't know the half of it. They're only seeing the off-hauling operation, but they're also paying during the stockpile filling operation too. Thanks.
Any other speakers online?
We have no other hands for public comment online?
Okay. No more?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, I do have one speaker card for a non-agendized item. Kyle Wells, water meter question.
Your 3 minutes will start now, Mr. Wells.
Good afternoon. My name is Kyle Wells. I'm a small business owner in Walnut Creek. I'm here today to ask for your help and consideration regarding assistance with the connection surcharge fee. Basically, what's going on is we are opening a new business in the new building, the Waymark, which is next to the BART station in Walnut Creek. It's a brand new building. Has apartment complexes on top and commercial space underneath. And it's brand new, so when we moved in, we were negotiating with the lease and so on and so forth. And we asked, is there water supplied to the building? And they said yes. What we didn't ask is if there are separate connection surcharge fees for the commercial units underneath, which is a fault on ours. But what turns out was we were under the assumption that the fees had already been paid for when the building was constructed. And now we're on the tail end of our construction phase right now, and we're going to install the water meter. And the fee came up, and it was a little bit hefty, to say the least. So basically, I want to present my case to you and see if there's any way we can either possibly come up with a reduction in fee, a payment plan, or just a deferral until we get the doors open and are making a little bit of money to go ahead and pay that fee. Thank you.
Clifford, do you want to address this?
Well, Andrew Lee's here. I think Andrew Lee could probably work with Kyle on some of the options. I didn't hear necessarily all the options that you were considering. I do understand that this is a developer who, unfortunately, I guess for Kyle, is when he developed the property, he did not pay any of the connection charges and was going to put it on all the people who are going to move into the building. So I would suggest that he work with Andrew Lee.
Yeah, I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't know that was an option. Yeah. That you don't pay up front.
I got it.
Thank you, Risha. I know, Clifford, you sent me the notice on this and how Kyle might be coming today, and he's out of the room now with Andrew. As Lisa stated, I didn't know that was an option when a building was being constructed and water to it, I always was under the assumption, like a house, that the water fee connection was paid for to get the water from the meter to the building, and then they can decide whether they want to pass it on and the rental cost or the purchase cost of the space. How often is it one where we're having people who are basically escaping their responsibility, I should say, of paying for the water service through the SCC charge? Is it common, and is that a best practice that we should have? I feel for where Kyle's coming from. I mean, he's a small business owner. It's a new business from what I'd read in the email that you provided to me. And small businesses work, especially in the beginning, work on very tight margins to get the loans and to get going. And it seems like a disservice to whether it be Kyle or somebody else, whomever it might be, wherever it might be, that they're put at an economic disadvantage when they're told, yes, there's water to the building, but then they're told, oh, but you have to pay for it, pay it. I mean, it's different in the negotiated lease. They may say that you're going to pay for part of it or whatever the case may be, but that doesn't sound like it was the case.
Yeah, I'll tell you, what I can do is I'll provide a memo to the board with answering your questions that you just asked.
Yeah, I just would hope that we can find a way for any small business, I don't care where it is or what they do, that we're more business friendly in how we approach things.
He's truly between a rock and a hard place now.
Vice President McIntosh, we have Mr. Sims in the audience, and Mr. Sims would like to speak on a non-agenda item
All right.
as well.
How you guys feeling?
And your 3 minutes start now.
This is the worst bill next to Comcast and Xfinity. This bill has been going on for over 10 years. Your people came in, put a meter on my property, I live in Montclair, and that water has been leaking over 10 years. Ever since you brought a meter to my property, it's been leaking. We just got through a massive winter. I'm worried about the whole hill going like they went in 2000, what was our last rains? Bad rains, or 2004. Every night, this is the worst bill on my desk. Every time I try to get hold of someone from EBMUD, oh, we'll send somebody up. Oh, we'll send somebody up. Oh, it's not from the meter. It's going up from the. We have no jurisdiction on the meter from the water pipe from the meter to the house. I've been paying this bill for over 10 years. 10 years. My wife says, and I said, why is it? There's just two of us there. Why is this bill $500 a month? We're senior citizens now. We can't get these high class salaries like you have, and your people that work at these pensions are off through the roof. My question is, I'm asking myself, how many other people are going through this? Now, I have a lot of respect for EBMUD. It's great water. But why don't one of you guys come up to our home and look at the water that's going down the road? My money going over 10 years going. You know what I'm saying? I took my time to come down here today because you need to hear this. With your high wages and your high pay and your slick suits and your nice shoes. I'm 65 years old. Struggling. Just because I live in Montclair doesn't mean I can live. I bought the home in '94 for $230,000. I can't afford $2 million like the neighbors next door. I'm on a pension and I'm going to be on Social Security pretty soon. And no one has looked at this bill. It's been going over for over 10 years. I have this bill. So what else are you doing to us in Oakland? Everything we don't have any police service. I can go on and on and on. But like I said, you do good things. But I've been paying this bill for over 10 years. 10 years, okay? I don't have a high salary. I've been a blue-collar worker at my job for 41 years. Anything that goes up, it's more money out of my pocket. So I want some action from this. Or I'll get down in the front of your building and just get a sign and have some people join me. Because the thing is, you probably think I'm hostile or whatever, but look at this bill. Look at this bill. Over 10 years. Over 10 years I've been paying this bill. Enough. So you have my name. I doubt anything will be done. I doubt it. I'm a gambling man. I'll bet here and there. I guarantee. See the smile? She doesn't care.
I do care, sir.
No, don't attack me. I'm just saying, you want to pay this bill? Pay this bill for us. Pay it. This bill is so expensive. I'm in the shower. Oh, I better stop running the water. Okay? Crazy. Yeah, it is crazy, and it's not right what you're doing to us. This gentleman lives in our district. I see him in Montclair. We don't have money like you do. I'm 65.
Mr.
Okay,
Sims, your
thank
3
you.
minutes have concluded. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, but I had to come down here and spend my time and show you my bill. Have a nice afternoon.
Clifford, can you address that issue in a memo, or can someone speak?
Well, can we make sure that Andrew's meeting with him outside if he's meeting with the other gentleman?
Dave, can you meet with him and see if he has a leak on his property, where the leak might be, and address the leak?
Is this something we've heard about?
I haven't.
I'm not familiar with this particular issue. It
I
sounds like
haven't gotten
there
any
may be a leak.
communication.
I mean, if it's affecting his bill, there's a leak on his side of the meter, but we'll have Dave talk to him. We can have staff go out and help.
The other question I had was, has he ever reached out to us prior in terms of the leak and getting it fixed and the size of the bill? I mean,
I'm not aware of it, but I don't know.
haven't gotten any communication. He's one of my constituents. I haven't gotten any communication from him.
We'll look into both.
We don't know.
All right, I have a consent calendar item, number 7, so we'll pull that item from the consent calendar.
I'll move the rest of the items.
Second. You have a motion and a second for the consent calendar. Do we need a roll call vote?
We do.
All right, roll call vote, Madam Secretary.
One moment.
And that's items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8.
Roll call vote. Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Coleman?
yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Katz?
Yes.
All right, so we do have a speaker card for item 7, and it's Civicorps, and it says Tessa, Amari, and Stephen.
So, oh, there they are.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Stephen Addison, and I manage the conservation program at Civicorps, and I think there will be a vote on the contract with East Bay MUD and Civicorps coming up. And me and about one of you young adults would like to speak to you guys today. I'm just getting out my notes on my phone. Civicorps is a paid job training program that we serve young adults from 18 to 26 years old. We're also an education program that includes wraparound services for our young adults. We provide requisites, counseling services, and transportation. Civicorps and East Bay MUD have been in partnership for over 35 years. In collaboration with East Bay MUD, we have maintained and treated over 10,000 acres of mud land to reduce wildfire danger throughout the East Bay. At the height of our fire season, which is pretty much right now, we filled about 5 to 6 crews that support East Bay MUD efforts. In our time together, we've also mentored and trained thousands of young adults. Some of those young adults work for East Bay MUD right now and other land managing organizations like East Bay Regional Park District, City of Oakland, City of Berkeley. Some of those successes would not have been possible without the support of East Bay MUD and the staff that we work with every day. Thank you for our continued partnership and the opportunity to speak today. Now I'd like to give one of our young adults a chance to speak.
How you doing? My name is Amari Allen. I've been with Civicorps for about a year now. I'm thankful for the opportunity for the partnership, and
Take your time.
A deep breath, that's what I always do.
I'm sorry. I've been with Civicorps for about a year now. I'm a crew leader, moving towards crew leader 2. I'm thankful for the opportunity that they have given me. Thankful for the life skills and training that they give me. Chainsaw, brush cutter, first aid, CPR. I also do want to come back to become a supervisor, to teach the young adults like I was taught, all the skills, all the stuff like that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a real quick question. What color hat are you? Blue. Blue, okay. Yeah, I was at the interim director of the California Conservation Corps, and we worked very closely with Civicorps in Oakland, and you guys do a tremendous job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll second the item.
And the item is number 7. We've removed it from the consent calendar, and it's to authorize an agreement beginning on or after July 1st, 2023 with Civicorps for 1 year for an amount not to exceed $618,000 to provide vegetation control and related services at various district properties. We have a motion and a second.
I just want one discussion item is just to really thank Civicorp for the work they're doing to help manage our fuels in the watershed and provide important opportunities for our youth in the area.
All right, let's have a roll call vote.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Katz?
Yes.
We didn't hear you, President Katz.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That moves us on to our public hearing. We are now on agenda item number 9. Public hearing to consider proposed changes to the water system and wastewater system schedule of rates and charges for fiscal years 2024 and 2025. Item 9. And I don't have any speaker cards for item 9.
Not for item 9.
You're on 10.
Correct. So if you can go ahead and open the public hearing with.
All right. The public hearing is now open. We welcome public comment. However, please note that public comments will not be included in the tabulation of written protests for purposes of determining whether a majority protest exists under Prop 218. To be considered, all written protests must be received before the close of this public hearing. We have a staff presentation by our Director of Finance, Sophia Skoda, Manager of Budget, Sam Feldman Crow, and Director of HR, Cindy R. Sharon.
Got it?
Okay, I'll begin. I'm here today to present a budget and rates for fiscal years 24 and 25. And this is the opening of the public hearing where we will hear the rates and charges, look over the proposed biennial budget and the position resolution that goes along with that budget. So just as I begin, there are many in the audience that may not have a sense of what we do at EBMUD in terms of where our water comes from. So I have a few brief slides to present to those online and in the audience about the work that EBMUD does. So EBMUD has just ended a century of service. So as we go through this year, we are celebrating 100 years supporting public health, the economy, and environmental protection. We've had an opportunity today to hear a little bit about some of the work that we do in our economy with the minority suppliers of the Western Western region. And we've also talked a little bit about some of the work that we do with regards to public health and the environment, in that we heard from the winner of the science fair who is working on protecting the environment using new methods with regards to environmental plastics. So our mission is to provide reliable, high-quality drinking water to the people of the East Bay to do so at reasonable rates, and to be a steward of our natural resources for now and for future generations. We see ourselves as a cornerstone of our community, and we operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. These are some shots of our staff in action, taking samples at a school to make sure water quality remains high, fixing a leak in a street, consulting over perhaps a call that came into our operations center, managing our system in front of computers or actually out in the field. Our East Bay budget and rates fund people, pipes, plants, and other critical community assets. When we look at this slide here, it shows the vast array of the type of work that we do. The picture on the top left shows our window treatment plant. You can see a reservoir under construction on the top right, a shot of our clarifier as part of the work that we do in wastewater treatment on the bottom right, and a shot of one of our staff working on a pipeline replacement on the bottom left. With respect to what we've done in terms of getting the word out to the public on our budget and rates, we did have an infrastructure workshop in October that was led by the engineering department. We really have a lot of capital that we're in the midst of and that we are moving forward with, and this is really a driver for our rates. We held an infrastructure tour also in October, and then built a budget and held our first budget workshop in January of this year. We then went through and started a period of community outreach that has continued, and we held a second budget workshop incorporating feedback from Budget Workshop 1, and that was on March 28th. And subsequent to that, we mailed the Proposition 218 notice that we hope that those online and in the audience received, which provides the details of the proposed rate increases that the board will consider today. So today, having filed the general manager's report on rates and charges in May, we are holding a public hearing on our rates and charges. And again, the board will consider the proposed rates and charges and the associated budget and the positions that are held in that budget. If the rates were to become, if the rates were voted and approved today, the rates would become effective on July the 1st for the rates for fiscal year 24, and the rates for fiscal year 25 would go into effect in 1 year following on July 1 of 2024. So going now to the Proposition 218 rates and charges, we have both Proposition 218 related and non-218 related charges. For members of the audience, either in the room or online, Proposition 218 was passed by the voters in 1997, became part of the California Constitution, and essentially places limits on how increases in rates are conducted by any entity that has a property-related fee or charge. And our rates are required to be in compliance with that law. So our rate increases, which of course fund our investments in the future, are really based on a couple of different things. So there's our actual budget, the amount of money that we need to do the work that we're doing with regards to capital, paying for salaries, benefits, and all of those the people that do that work. But it's also a function of our water sales. So if you look here on this slide, the first thing in the first row there you'll see is our water sales. And our actual water sales during fiscal year 22 was just under 144 million gallons per day. Our projected for FY23 was 137 million gallons per day, knowing that we were going to be in the midst of drought. We actually believe that we'll end this year at about 134, but the FY24 and 25 budgets were built on assumptions of just under 140 million gallons and 144 million gallons per day. The reason I'm bringing this up is that because our costs are largely fixed, because that water comes down as snow melts, enters our reservoir, and then we basically distribute that water throughout our service area. When we sell less water than we plan to sell, because we're not buying that water, except in the case of drought, which is separate, we actually have a shortfall in revenue. And that's been one of the drivers for rate increases in the past. It's not a rate driver coming up, but that is kind of a note to members of the audience. So our proposed rate increases for the next 2 years are 8.5% and 8.5%. We'll talk a little bit more about that. The last 2 years' rate increases were 4% and 4%. Those were moderated lower than what we had proposed in prior years when we were kind of trying to do a 5-year look ahead. And part of that was because we understood that during the pandemic, many people's incomes were and livelihoods were very much impacted. And so we wanted to be able to move forward with much of the work that we needed to do, but to be cognizant of the reality of the pocketbooks of our public. In terms of our actual average monthly single-family residential water bill, based on 8 CCF, CCF is 100 cubic feet. With the proposed rate increases, that bill would come in just under $75 on a monthly basis. For the average family, just under $81 in FY25. On the wastewater system, again, the rate increases for the last 2 years were 4% and 4%, and again, proposed increases 8.5% and 8.5%, bringing those monthly single-family residential bills to just under $27 for FY24, just over $29 for FY25. I do want to note that EBMUD only provides wastewater treatment services. We do not provide wastewater collection. That is done by our partner agencies, the City of Oakland, City of Piedmont, City of Berkeley, and others in our service area that provide those collection services. And this goes back to EBMUD's history with wastewater, where in the 1950s we were asked to become a wastewater treatment provider as those untreated wastewaters were going into the bay untreated. So this is just a shot of your water rate dollars at work. If you were to pictorially take one of those dollars and split it up, about 50 cents would be going towards infrastructure improvements, so building reservoirs, pipelines, treatment plants, pumping plants. Another 30 cents would be the funds for storage, treatment, delivery, the service that's received, and then the remaining 8, 4, 3, and 2 cents collectively collected for administration, customer service, management of our natural resources, which would include some of the work that we are doing with Civicorps and regulatory compliance. In terms of our wastewater rate dollar, about 40 cents, a little over that, goes to wastewater treatment, and another almost 40 cents goes for infrastructure improvements, with that balance of that dollar making up environmental regulatory compliance, administration, and customer service work. So our rates are based on cost of service as required by law, and we essentially ensure that we are able to provide reliable service from an operating perspective, and that we're able to ensure that we make the capital expenditures needed to provide, again, that reliable service. And revenues from our water and wastewater rates fund those expenditures. Proposition 218 requires that all, again, property-related charges, including water and wastewater rates, are following those requirements, and there are procedural and regulatory requirements for rate adoption that we continue to follow, of course. I do want to note we are a not-for-profit public agency, and so revenues from our rates may not exceed the cost of water and wastewater service. We do not have shareholders. We do not create a profit. So again, our rates are based on cost of service. This shows a graphic of a chart which is published in the Proposition 218 notice and shows for a range of users from the 25th percentile through the 95th percentile what the proposed changes would do in terms of impacts to the bills. And you'll see in that bottom row there's the average user. A question that folks from the audience might have is, why is the 50th percentile lower than the average? Shouldn't they be the same? And the answer is that the mean and the median in our particular service area is not the same. So 50% of our customers actually use less than the average customer. So higher water users pull up that average in effect. So 50% of our customers are paying less than the $63 per month as of FY24 and $68 per month. So when we look at the impact to the multifamily residential and non-residential water charges, this shows kind of a typical multifamily 4-unit building, an average 5+ unit building that has a 1-inch meter in size, but use of about 50 CCF, so double what that that 25 CCF 4-unit building would be using, and then also shows a commercial building also using 50 CCF and an industrial user using 10 times that amount at 500, and shows the bill impacts again for this sort of subcategory of non-residential users, all impacted at that 8.5% and then 8.5%. Wastewater charges that are shown on the water bill, collected on the water bill. For the average single-family residential user, we again see the FY24 bill at just under $27, increasing again by 8.5% in that FY25 year. The maximum amount for single-family residential customer has an assumed use of 9. The reason why there's a maximum is because it's assumed that there's only a certain amount that's going to be used indoor, and that any additional water over that maximum would basically go down into the ground. So in other words, there's only so much that's being used inside, and that's what's actually coming to our treatment plant, and we don't want to charge for more use indoors than we think would logically take place. There's also a wet weather facilities charge, and this is actually collected on the property tax bill, shown here in the notes, and a small lot of less than 5,000 square feet, which represents most of the lots in our service area, is paying about $136 as of the start of fiscal 24, with an 8.5% rate increase, and $147.5 roughly at the start of FY25. So again, 50% of our lots fall in that small category, and then there's a medium and a large category. The wet weather facilities charges cover charges to run our facilities. Those of you that go to Costco in Richmond, the facility that's located just across from the parking lot in Costco in that area, another facility that we have in Oakport near the Coliseum, and then a last facility at our main wastewater treatment plant, including and one smaller additional facility as well. So what happens during wet weather is that whereas we might see 50 million gallons per day at the treatment plant in terms of actual sewage, during a rainstorm, we might receive 10 times that amount of water as a result of infiltration and inflow into the pipelines that the cities own, and also into the private laterals, the sewer laterals that are owned by homeowners. And we are, at those times, the bacteria at the plant are unable to catch up to be able to treat all of that wastewater. And so, again, we turn on these wet weather facilities to provide a different level of treatment and discharge that water into the bay, so that we can meet those needs without our full treatment service, while we continue to work on making our systems in concert with our cities and partners tighter. So in terms of the actual total annual water service charges for a single-family residential customer, you'll see here EBMUD shown in yellow in the middle at a total of $894. Again, this is for an 8 CCF user. As we saw earlier, more than 50% of our customers are using more like 6 or less CCF, so this would be a higher bill for our community. But where it stacks up with regards to other agencies is that it falls here around the midway mark. I think it's number 7 out of the 13 shown. Of course, as you might imagine, in these entities, the actual average single-family residential customer might use a different amount. Pleasanton, their use is very likely greater than 8, for example. Same in Marin, whereas San Francisco's is likely less. With regards to the wastewater bill, you'll see here EBMUD showing at number 3, but the yellow portion is actually the only part that EBMUD controls. As I said earlier, EBMUD only provides wastewater treatment. We don't provide collection. So the collection piece is kind of an amalgam of all the entities that provide a wastewater collection service, and that's the rest of the green bar that adds up to the total of 978. Now we're moving on to the non-Proposition 218 rates and charges. So again, these aren't governed by the California Constitution, but are included as part of the hearing process. The wastewater system capacity charges, this is a charge that we charge new entities hooking on to our system. I believe we had a public speaker earlier who was talking about their water system capacity charge at a new facility in Walnut Creek. So those costs are increasing, and the range of that increase, depending on the facilities themselves and depreciation, et cetera, range from 7.9 to 8.6% over the FY23 rates. On the wastewater capacity fee side, those increases range from 6.8 to 7.5, again, because specific facilities, depreciation, et cetera, are going to be different for the water and wastewater facilities and for the different regions. And the single-family residential wastewater capacity fee does increase from $3,170 to $3,170 from $2,950. Again, if those were approved, they would become effective on July the 1st. I did want to point out, I mentioned at some point that our budget is based on 137 million gallons per day on the water side, and yet I also mentioned that we believe only 50 million MGD comes in on an average summer day on the wastewater side. So again, there's two reasons. One, that average water use is an average spread over the whole year. More water is sold in the summer and less in the winter, as folks might imagine. And also because our wastewater service area is a sub-area of the overall water area. So not everybody that receives water service also receives wastewater service. This shows the actual regions, Region 1, Region 2, and Region 3, which have different amounts of use for our single-family residential customers. Again, because lot sizes and weather patterns mean that the average water use is different. And this shows the range of the changes as well that I had shown on the prior slide. The same on the multifamily residential side. You can see here a multifamily residential in Region 1, Region 2, and Region 3, and you can see in this particular case, all those uses are the same. It's because, again, we assume that actually an apartment is going to be the same, whether it's in a warmer area or a cooler area, and the landscaping needs of an apartment building are relatively de minimis relative to the number of units in the building in general. So with regards to water SCC's non-residential rates, again, this shows a current non-residential 5/8 meter, and it shows different estimated water uses and what the current and proposed SCC charges, again, would be for the next fiscal year that's upcoming. And again, we bring these on an annual basis, whereas our regular rates and charges governed under Prop 218 are brought every 2 years. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to my colleague, Sam Feldman, the budget manager, who will go over some details on the budget, and then I'll return.
Losing some papers here. Well, hello. Happy to talk through the budget side in particular. So as you all know, and for the audience at home and here in person, EBMUD is proud to be responsible financial stewards. So we're a not-for-profit public utility. There's no profit or... Thanks. Sorry. There's no profit or shareholders to fund. It all goes directly back into the operations and the capital investments into our system. And that's a really important part about EBMUD, and it also drives our values here. And on this same note, EBMUD is also the only California water utility to receive Moody's Investor Service highest AAA bond rating. So that was about a year ago now. And we also have a AAA from S&P, the second of the two large rating agencies. Really demonstrates that we're good financial stewards of our resources. That said, we have challenges ahead, and this budget is aimed and proposed to the board to meet those challenges. One of the biggest ones is aging infrastructure. We have pipes in the ground that are older than EBMUD. 1880s, I think, is the oldest pipe still in our system, still in operation. And some of those are still working, but we also know we need to make big investments into our pipeline and our infrastructure to make sure that we're ready for what's ahead, which includes this next point: climate change, drought, floods, fires. The swing between drought and excess water is, even just this last year has really shown that to us, and that requires a different response than it did 50 or even 100 years ago. And then fires in our watershed is always a concern, and getting our systems prepared for the effects of what that could be is an important part of the investments we're making over in this budget. Emerging contaminants, also an issue that we're dealing with and researching and continuing to work on. So there's been a lot of news about PFAS. Of course, the board has had conversations about this as well, and other issues both on the water and wastewater side. And this budget continues to work on those issues along with nutrients as well. I'd group those together in terms of water treatment or wastewater treatment on the nutrient side. And then changing regulations. Over the last 100 years, we cannot do the kind of capital at the speed with which we did it 100 years ago today, and that's a good thing, I think. Environmental protections, labor protections, worker protections, all of that increases the cost and scale compared to 100 years ago. And that's an important part of what these challenges, what this budget addresses in terms of the challenges. And then in terms of inflationary cost pressures, many of us feel it in our own pocketbooks, and the district feels it as well. Equipment, energy, chemicals, and labor costs have all grown significantly. Energy costs we pay PG&E in part, along with others, for the power we receive. So when they increase costs, sometimes the non-residential costs increases a little higher, a little faster, which is what we would pay as the district. We have to pay those bills. And chemicals, I like to use the example, the board approved a chemical contract a couple of months ago that one particular type of chlorine increased from 50 cents a gallon just about to $2.50 a gallon. So 5 times price increase over about a 4-year period, I think it was. So these are really significant increases in our costs due to the global supply chain, global inflation, other issues we are dealing with. And this budget meets those challenges. In terms of generational investments, we talk quite a bit about this throughout the since October last year. So over these 9 months, we're entering this really capital-intensive period in our history. The 5-year capital improvement program is increasing to $2.8 billion, which is more than $500 million more than it was 2 years ago. It's about 24% growth. And as Sophia mentioned, during the pandemic, we increased rates lower than we had projected to do, and we tapped reserves, particularly this year, more than we would like to do to remain strong financial stewards in order to moderate those rate increases. So the rate increases proposed today that Sophia talked about really accelerates those investments in resilient and reliable water and wastewater systems of the future. And so in terms of total appropriations, this is all spelled out in the attachments and all of the in the resolution itself, but here is a look at what it looks like. You've got several total columns there, but we break our budgets into 3 big areas: operations, debt service, and capital appropriation. And then for the water and wastewater system for both 24 and 25. So all on one slide there. And the annual total for fiscal 2024 is about $1.4 billion. In fiscal 2025, it's about $1.3 billion. You will note it's a little bit lower in that second year because of the capital appropriation side. Capital appropriations, we often need to appropriate at the beginning of a project, even if it's not spent in that single year. So a little bit of a nuance there for why there's a decline in the second year. And then just in terms of that capital program, we really focus on the cash flow when we talk about actual expenses out the door. And you'll see here that the capital program for the water side is about $2.5 billion over the 5-year planning period in this budget, and then about $335 million over the 5-year planning period for wastewater, with some annual variation year to year, primarily driven by very large projects that either complete or on the wastewater side, you'll see start to ramp up towards that end of that 5-year period. And so among those capital investments, on the water system side, it's 127 miles of pipeline replaced over the next 5 years. There's also big investments in Orinda and Upper San Leandro water treatment plants that will, again, improve the plant capacity for the Upper San Leandro and seismic reliability, chemical safety system. And then for Orinda, it's really preparing that treatment plant for a new generation, I would say, of treatment technology that is necessary to prepare the district for the future of water quality. And then Lafayette Reservoir, a replacement of the outlet tower for seismic retrofit purposes. Sobrante, also improved chemical safety system. and a lot of other improvements, including neighborhood reservoir and pumping plant replacements as well. And then on the wastewater system side that serves that smaller service area, they're included in that 5-year capital plan is rehabilitation of 5 sewer pipeline segments that connect the city's collection systems to our wastewater treatment. Also rehab of secondary reactors and clarifiers, new or remodeled influent pump station, oxygen plant, a nutrient removal project towards the end of that 5-year period, a new dewatering building, as well as seismic retrofit of buildings. Some of those buildings are fairly original from 1950s and continue to need updates and big investments to make sure they're ready for what is certainly ahead at some point. So I'm going to turn it over to Cindy, I think, next, before back to Sophia. Sorry.
Thank you, Sam. Good afternoon. I have the pleasure of walking you through the next few slides that will cover specific details pertaining to the fiscal year 24-25 position resolution, which reflects workforce planning and capacity building to support the workforce investments for the next 2 fiscal years and ongoing. In a previous slide, Sam spoke to our water and wastewater system investments. In this slide, we show a progression of an increase in our staffing in the district's FTE count. Compared to the current fiscal year, this proposed budget will increase FTE counts by 3.3%. To approximately 2,229.75 FTEs in fiscal year 2024. I'd like to highlight that the growth is primarily occurring in the number of full-time civil service positions. Shortly in the next slide here, I'll present the purpose of the additional staff and other categories where the positions will be allocated. And just for further insight, in terms of a breakdown of staffing by bargaining unit, for Local 444, we'll be adding an additional 29 positions. For Local 2019, 30.5 positions. For Local 21, 7 full-time positions. And for Local 39, 4 additional positions, and the latter being 2 additional positions for management. As we look into the future of the 2 next fiscal years, we have engaged in an intentional workforce planning effort that will allow us to meet the needs of our growing workforce. These next 2 slides consist of a breakdown of the additional staffing in various categories in support of succession and workforce planning, the management of our aging infrastructure, to technology and innovation, to name just a few areas. For our water system on this slide, there is a total of 57 FTEs that will be added by fiscal year 2025. I'd like to highlight a couple of categories here that have been significant to the board. At the top of the list here is a reduction of the FM&O contracting out. We are adding 21 additional FTEs. The second large category is our aging infrastructure, where we are adding dedicated staffing and support of additional 15 FTEs. The third next large category in terms of additional resources and staffing would be under the support staff. The additional staffing that's being allocated there include but not limited to lifting and supporting our retirement and benefits division. As we are undergoing the replacement of our pension system, which is a very significant lift, we are preparing for additional infrastructure staffing to support that major area. In addition to under workforce development, the continued focus of building our pipeline into East Bay MUD by adding additional interns and trainees. So these are just some of the positions to highlight under our water system. For the wastewater division, there will be an increase of 14.5 additional FTEs by fiscal year 2025. And akin to the previous slide, there is emphasis in building our staffing and capacity as we continue to contract out and address our aging infrastructure. And finally, just a couple of things to highlight. As part of our workforce planning efforts, there's also a few classification changes. We have recently created a new classification titled the Community Affairs Representative. This classification will be involved with the implementation and deployment of the Public Affairs Strategic Communications Plan. As part of ongoing positions control management, we've identified 3 positions that will be deleted because they overlap with other classifications within the staffing plan. And lastly, other actions that will be taken in terms of some of our classifications for our controller. There's the intention to decrease the salary grade by 2 levels. This is to ensure that we constantly are looking at equity amongst our staffing. And so we are bringing down the salary by 2 grades. And likewise, in looking at the internal audit supervisor position, we will be increasing the salary to ensure that we are able to compete with the market. And that is that concludes my update. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Yeah, quick question. The Community Affairs Representative 3 position, can you tell us more about it that you would like to add?
Let's see, the community relations position is so it's part of a series. It is a journey level classification, so there's a 1, 2, and now 3. I also have Kathy Zito here, Director of Community Affairs, that can also give us an update.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon. So the Community Affairs Representative 3 is focused on education specifically. So you might recall that we have our, several different educational components that we've been developing. So the Community Water Academy, the Water Wednesdays, the Water on Wheels, our K-12 education, and currently that is sort of spread out among a number of different folks. And so the idea is to collect all that information and provide some strategy and structure to our educational outreach, which until now I think has been a little bit more scattered. So this kind of follows on our strategic communications plan, which we brought to the board last year to follow up on education for the community in terms of letting them know a little bit more about what we do, how we do it, and why we do it.
Follow-up question. How many community affairs representative positions do you have?
Currently, there are 4 of the CAR 2s.
Okay, and this is a regular full-time position, right?
Correct.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. So with that, we now are going to go over the Proposition 218 protest provisions. So the way that the law works is that if protests are received by a majority of affected parcel owners and tenants that are actually directly liable for payment of a bill to us, then those rates cannot be implemented. So in our particular case, there are actually 337,192 water parcels. That's slightly different from the numbers shown here. Some parcels we believe needed to be removed that had to do with the private sewer lateral program and how they were separately billed there. And the sub portion of the 337,000 that represents wastewater is 150,308. So essentially, we would need to have received protests of 50% plus 1 for water and for wastewater to invalidate the ability of the board to take action to increase rates. And so I would like to, before we enter public comment, just make one point. Staff does understand that this is a significant budget and that these rate increases, while 20 cents a day in each year for the average customer in each of the next 2 fiscal years for water and 7 cents a day for each of the next 2 fiscal years for wastewater may not be a lot for many of our customers. We also understand that that's not the case with all of our customers. And so I did want to point out that the district has what we believe is the oldest and most generous customer assistance program in the state of California. And at present, for a family of 4, the income cap is $71,000. So any families making up to that amount should absolutely apply to EBMUD to be included as part of that program for up to a 50% discount on the water bill and up to a 35% discount on the wastewater bill. I also want to add that Andrew Lee and his team continue to work tirelessly to make improvements to that program, including as part of the work to complete contracts to bill on behalf of City of Oakland for the wastewater sewer collection charges, City of Berkeley, and others that we have been able to work with them to also provide the same amount of discount that we are providing. Same in Emeryville as well. And so he and his team continue to work to look for ways to improve outreach, to get the word out about this program. We do need to make the improvements that we need to do to make sure that we don't become a Jackson, Mississippi, but we also understand that we're in a service area where while 25% of our households are making more than $200,000 a year, 25% of our households are making less than $50,000 a year. And so our customer assistance program is an absolute key to what allows us to bring this budget and rates forward. I also want to note that the budget does include funding for a position that allows for additional work with our CAP program through the customer service group. So with that, I conclude my comments, and I believe at this point that we need to get a tally of the number of.
Sure, and I'll have a reminder as well.
Okay.
John had a question.
Okay, I just have a quick question.
Yes.
For those to be eligible for the CAP program, sorry, it's not green. Oh, it's green. There we go, it's green now. For those to be eligible for the CAP program, have an income of $75,000 or less per year.
71,000.
I've talked to some people in my ward, and I'm sure it's in many other wards, who have less than that, but they may have bought the property in 1960, and as a result of the property and they're senior citizens, they're taking into account, well, the property value is this, therefore you don't qualify, even though they're on fixed income. How do we fix that?
Is Andrew Lee here?
Good question, Director Coleman. Our eligibility is solely based on income. So we don't look at real estate value or anything like that on the customer's portfolio.
Okay, that's just interesting. One person I know, and I'm not going to go into, he's not in my ward, but his income is less than that, but he was denied it. And he's on a fixed income, and they asked for all these different categories of, you know, what he does and what he did do. He's retired now and everything else. And he's so much on the margin. I mean, with 8.5% increase, I guess he will qualify, but right now he doesn't qualify.
Yeah, the way the CAP program works is strictly income-based. The application is very straightforward. We don't even ask for that information.
Yeah.
I will also say that just in terms of how much it applies, we say up to that amount, it's 1,050 gallons per person per day. So if in a family of 4, you're talking about 4,200 gallons per day is applicable for that 50% discount.
Right, and this person is a single person, and having been to his house, I can assure you it's probably not more than 50 gallons a day at the most.
Yeah. So the eligibility is based on how many heads in a household, and also
This is one.
Yeah. So I, welcome to talk to them, and in case they, need more information about the program and how to qualify for it.
Thank you.
So that 71,000 though is for a family of 4.
That's correct. Yes.
It's significantly less for a single
For a
person.
single family.
What is it for a single person?
For a single family, I'll do you have it handy?
37.
I don't have the exact number, but it's in the high 50,000s.
Okay.
So with that, I conclude my comments, and I believe at this point that it is public comment. Is that correct, Risha?
We have the tally.
So the
All right,
tally should really be
so,
given at the close of
Oh,
public
got it.
comment.
All right, but while you're tallying, I do have a statement to read for our public speakers. So, as stated earlier, verbal comments are not a valid written protest for purposes of Prop 218. To lodge a protest, the owners of record of parcels upon which the water and wastewater service rates and charges are proposed to be imposed, or tenants who are directly liable for the payment of the proposed water service rates and charges, should have submitted a written protest by U.S. mail or by hand delivering it to the district staff, or by dropping it off in the drop boxes available here at the district's administration building at 375 11th Street in downtown Oakland. To be considered, all protests must be received before the close of this public hearing. Madam Secretary, are there any speakers online? And we do have public speakers for attendees here, but they are all signed up for item 10. But it's my understanding they can speak on under item 9 as well?
Correct.
All right. So while staff is tallying, why don't we start with speaker number 1? And that's Eve Longell. Eve, did I pronounce your last name correct?
It would be Longeli.
Longell.
Yes.
All right,
Thank
thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board, people in the audience. My name is Eve Longeli, and I'm representing Kevin Holden of the Service Workers Project for Affordability Utilities and Water, or SWAPOW. For those of you who don't know, SWAPOW is an ad hoc utility advocacy committee of low-income workers and other community residents fighting for clean, affordable water, safe electricity, and affordable other utilities. Since our inception, we have called on you, our elected representatives, to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, all 17 goals. Kevin has been volunteering for 9 years. He came in originally needing assistance with utility advocacy. He's a minister in his church, and he teaches the gospel. He's a chaplain at the City of Oakland Chaplaincy Program and a grandfather of 2 young boys. I want to start off by saying that SWAPOW used to have 10 demands. Now we have 6. You eliminated the water theft penalty fee, the egregious deposit policy. You have made CAP easy to apply for and have put a moratorium on water shutoffs for now. I give you credit for that. But we are here again today to stop these unjust rate increases. We have dozens of members requesting advocacy to make payment plans on past due balances that are in the thousands of dollars. We see the tidal wave coming. You cannot reasonably expect working people to afford increased water rates on top of everything else. We have been doing advocacy by and for members to get financial assistance, but it won't stop the tsunami. We canvass low-income neighborhoods to reach service workers and their families who are struggling to keep up with the skyrocketing cost of utilities. Service workers lack living wages. We teach how to organize to fundamentally change your living and working conditions. Recently, we met a woman who is 65 years old. She is a caregiver for the elderly and children and has been living in East Oakland for 25 years. She contacted EBMUD several times that her water did not taste right and was discolored. After numerous complaints, EBMUD technicians finally came out and examined the meter and pipes and said they were outdated. Now she is being charged an extra $70 a month for chloride to be added to her water, and she has a past due bill that is over $1,500 a month. If you increase the rates, how will she and others like her be able to keep up? From the Bible, and I quote, "When you refuse to help me, help the least of my brothers. You are refusing to help me." He speaks to the least of us, that's the poor, the working people who are the backbone of this economy, but share none of its fruits. Jesus said, "If you don't help them, you don't help me." Jesus reminds us to stay humble and lift up those who have been left behind. It is our duty to uplift all our brothers and sisters. We are our brother's keeper. We are not asking for handouts. Join us to bring everyone up. I am here to say no to your proposed rate increase. Implement SWAPOW demand number 1. Install a permanent moratorium on disconnection of water service for any customer whose income is at or below the federal poverty level. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sai Muktadi. Good afternoon. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. Hello, my name is Sai Muktevi, and I'm a volunteer advocate for the Service Workers Project for Affordable Utilities and Water. So POW! I'm a hardware engineer and I've been volunteering for 4 years. We're here today to demand that EBMUD pursues other means to get the funding they need to not increase the water rates. 8.5% this year and next for a total of 17% over the next 2 years. Instead, go to the institutions that have the money, the state and the federal government. We could argue about the exact dollar amounts that would increase per month or per year, but at the end of the day, we are seeing hundreds, $200 bill increases every month from small business owners and families and single homeowners. Now, no rate increase can be supported by this community. You will hear today from others in SoPal from all walks of life who cannot afford the existing rates. Electricity, food, medicine, gas have all gone through the roof, and we are barely struggling to afford that as it is. While EBMUD is not the only reason low-income service workers in the East Bay are struggling with their day-to-day expenses, you can join us and be part of the solution. EBMUD's 2024 to 2025 year documents show that how once every few years, EBMUD has hundreds of millions of dollars going to investment banks in this form of municipal bonds. The capital needed to keep the water structure up to date. Providing water is more costly than individual customers can bear the responsibility of. Therefore, municipal bonds are sold in large quantities at a low interest rate. Even though the interest rate may be low, these bonds are supposed to mature for 30 years, and they're compounded semi-annually, meaning a very large interest that will have to be shouldered by the ratepayers and no one else. EBMUD is now $2.6 billion in debt. But by the time their projections show that they'll pay off this $2.6 billion in 2052, 2053, it'll be an extra $1.4 billion in interest for a total of $4 billion that the ratepayers cannot afford. And if we were to take into accommodation the behavior of more bonds every few years, then this is an extra $6 a month that customers would have to pay just for the interest on these bonds, and we cannot pay that. Why is EBMUD looking for ratepayers to fill these holes? This is not fiscally responsible. SWPAO has seen the effort you guys and your team has put together to make this budget, and we honor that. But the money that is needed to support this water infrastructure cannot be borne by the people. So we are beseeching for the state, and if not the state, for the federal government to reclaim our tax dollars here in California. Join with us and demand that they adequately fund our municipality. If EBMUD does have one of the best community outreach programs of water municipalities in California, then the state truly deserves all the media ridicule it receives at the richest state in the richest country that does not provide water as a right. I'm here to call on you to pass these rate increases. Instead, not to pass these rate increases. Instead, implement SWPAO's demand number 2. Make reasonable accommodations for payment plans for any customer whose income is at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. Just because water is provided, if it is provided at a rate that is simply unsustainable and fiscally irresponsible, then that has taken away our human right to water. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sandra Toscano. Oh, poor baby.
Minimize the
Hello, everybody. My name is Sandra Toscano.
Good afternoon.
I am here today as a member and volunteer advocate of the Service Workers Project of Affordable Utility and Water, or SWPAO. I have been active with SWPAO for 7 years and had advocate on behalf of other low-income service workers, people living in fixed income like myself. 6 years ago, my wife, Rosa Portugal, had an emergency surgery to remove her gallbladder. My wife and I both work in construction, and at the time work was slow, so we didn't have enough income to keep up with the rising of the cost living. While my wife was in the hospital, we received a 48-hour notice from EBMUD. I called them immediately to let them know our situation, but they told me unless I pay the full amount due, the service was going to be disconnected. I explained it to them it was not possible for me at the time since I was in the hospital with my wife, and neither one of us were employed. They advised me to talk to my family members and friends to ask them to put the money together to pay you. The customer service representative then asked me, "Is there anything else I can help you with?" So I answered no. They ended my call with no hesitation or consideration of my family situation. I was in the hospital for 2 days assisting my wife, and when I came back home, my water was disconnected. So Then I described my situation to the advocates and member of SOPAO, and they told me to come into the office and work with them. Advocates and members spoke with Edmund over 6 hours. They transferred us several times, and a member of the SOPAO finally reached supervisors, and my services were then restored. I am only one of many of the customers who have received assistance with advocacy from SOPAO, but this is not enough. We, as the working people that literally build and continue to maintain this country, deserve more. Without workers like myself and my wife, there will be no buildings, no renovations, and no constructions. The World Meteorological Organization states that there is a 98% chance of having the hottest year period 2023-2027 ever recorded. Hydration is important to all of our survival. If we continue to increase these rates, circumstances such as mine will only be more common. With everything going on in the economy, we need government municipalities to uphold to their needs of constituency. Water is a necessity for humans, is not a privilege. I am here to demand you not to move forward with this rate increase and put forward SOPAO's demand number 3. Cancel arrears for ratepayers below 300 of the poverty line. Thank you everyone for your support, because together we will succeed.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mauricio Chavez.
I will be translating for Mauricio.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Mauricio Chávez, soy residente de la ciudad de Oakland. Soy miembro de Voluntario y Proyecto de Trabajadores y Servicios para Servicios Públicos y Agua Accesible, o SOPAO. Trabajo en la pintura exterior e interior. Estoy aquí para decirles que ustedes y la comunidad, verdad, el aumento de las tasas de nuestras necesidades básicas no han causado daño, es demasiado.
Hello, good morning. My name is Mauricio Chavez. I am a resident of Oakland. I am a member and volunteer with the Service Workers Project for Affordable Utilities and Water, or SOPAO. I work in exterior and interior painting. I'm here to tell you and the community the truth. Increasing rates of all basic necessity has causes harm. It is too much.
Le debo casi $2,000 a Invoice Mode. No tengo mucho trabajo, no tengo nada de dinero y no sé cómo voy a pagarlo. No permitan que sus prestamistas, los bancos, los controlen y nos den la espalda al pueblo. Estos precios tan altos han afectado a mi familia, a mis compañeros. Es realmente agotado porque no tengo cómo hacer estos pagos, y la verdad es que los precios de los artículos de primera necesidad están por las nubes.
I owe almost $2,000 to EBMUD. I don't have much work, I don't have money, and I don't know what I'm going to pay, when I'm going to pay it. Do not allow the bondholders, the banks, to control you and turn you back on us, the people. These high prices have affected my family, my colleagues, and it's really exhausting because we do not have a way to make these payments. And the truth is that prices for our necessity are to the skies.
Ir por otro aumento de las tarifas de agua es demasiado. Lo que no está haciendo es demasiado. Necesitamos una solución real. Estoy aquí para decirles que vayan a los gobiernos estatales, federales. Ellos tienen dinero. Nosotros ya no tenemos más dinero. Esto es injusto.
Going for yet another rate increase is too much. What you are doing is too much. We need a real solution. I'm here to tell you to go to the state and the federal government. They do have the money. We don't have any more money. This is injustice.
Don Lai, usted dijo en una audiencia el 11 de julio del 2017, tenemos que mirar el Estado para que brinde algunos alivios de esa manera. Estoy de acuerdo que no hemos movido demasiado lento. También dijo el 13 de diciembre del 2017 en la reunión del Comité de Planificación que ustedes son el grupo más organizado que jamás hayan existido en una reunión de EBMUD. Desde que he estado en la Junta durante 13 años, estamos aquí para servir al público. No somos como PG&E, somos un servicio público municipal.
Darlene, you say at a hearing on July 11, 2017, we have to look to the state to provide some relief. I agree that we have moved too slow. You also say on December 13, 2017, at a planning committee meeting, you are the most organized group that was ever come to EBMUD meeting. Since I have been in the board over 20 years, we are here to serve the public. We are not like PG&E. We are a public municipality utility.
Es por eso que hoy estoy aquí para llamar a ustedes, miembros de la Junta de EBMUD, no pasen estos aumentos de tarifa. Les pido que implementen la demanda SOPAO número 4. Permitan que los planes de pagos para cuestas atrasadas se extiendan a 24 meses para brindar más accesibilidad a los clientes de bajos ingresos.
That is why I'm here today to call on EBMUD board members. Do not pass this rate increase. I call on you to implement SWAPAO's demand number 4. Allow payment plans for arrear accounts to extend 24 months to provide more affordability for low-income customers. Thank you very much.
Gracias.
Thank you. We have 3 more speaker cards. Jamila Woods, followed by Shirley Anderson, and last, Mike Sims. You each have 3 minutes. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Jamila Woods, and I am the Vice President of Service Workers Project for Affordable Utilities and Water, SWAPAO. I am a volunteer advocate for thousands of Alameda County residents and East Bay MUD customers. Not only am I a volunteer advocate, I am an Alameda County resident and a security guard for the Oakland School for the Arts. I only get paid $16 an hour for this, so it affects me and everyone all around me. That is why it is an ongoing concern of mine. During my 6-year journey, I have monitored the State Water Resources Control Board reports, Assembly Bills 401 and 685, which call for the human right to water. We as a community have seen time and time again local, state, and federal governments deprioritize policies for basic human rights in favor of corporate profits. As of 2019, right before the initial phase of COVID-19, the state of California reported a $21.4 billion budget surplus. Last year, they reported a $100 billion budget surplus. Where did that money go? The federal government just passed a budget where they stated there is $50 to $70 billion of federal COVID relief money scattered across the country. What better use is there for these funds than to pay for this infrastructure? The state has the funds, and if not, the federal government definitely does. We are calling on East Bay MUD once again to put in policies that remain consistent with Sustainable Development Goal number 6. There is absolutely no reason, no valid reason, for East Bay MUD to raise the rates twice in a matter of 3 years. And we all very well know that capital support is the cash and the assets that shareholders give a company in exchange for stock. East Bay MUD has rationalized the proposed rate hikes by stating they are consistent with other water municipalities across the country. But the same logic follows. If everyone jumps off a bridge, would you follow? Just because everyone is doing it does not mean it is a good idea. East Bay MUD could choose to lead the way in sensible financial practice by going to institutions with money for money. In May of 2022, East Bay MUD received the highest water bond rating of AAA, the only utility in California to receive this top assessment. While we do want that to continue because it means lower interest rates, I am calling on you to take the same fiscally responsible approach with us. More shutoffs mean more health-related expenses that we all pay for. I am here to call on you to find another way. Don't pass this increase. I am calling for implementation of SWAPAO's demand number 5, install rate adjustments so that household water costs do not exceed 2% of household income per federal standards for any customer whose income is at or below 200% of the federal poverty level, which is the majority of working people, like just about everybody in here. Thank you again for taking the time to hear my heartfelt concern.
So we have Shirley Anderson, followed by our last speaker, Mike Sims.
Mr. Sims left. Mr. Sims spoke earlier, so he left.
Go to the side. Oh, go to the side. Let me put this up. And then I'll pull this.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shirley Anderson, and I'm a retired CNA worker. Just a moment. I am here as a member of Supplier. And I am here to speak on behalf of my community. Many people are still recovering from loss of income from the pandemic, and now with record inflation, I can say confidentially from the pandemic, and now, oh, I'm reading the same thing over again, excuse me. I can say confidentially that no one can afford to keep up with the rising cost of living. I asked EBMUD why at this time this or like this are you deciding to raise the rates on all of us? Water is a human right. AB 685 guarantees the right to clean, portable, and affordable water. Raising the rates 8.5% is not the solution. Has the board considered repercussions of what these rate hikes will do to the community? I know these are thousands of ratepayers who face similar health conditions where water is critical in our livelihood. As water is a human right, no one should have to sacrifice their livelihood, nor should they have to go into debt just to have water. East Bay Mud mission is to manage the natural resources which the district is entrusted to provide reliable, high-quality water and wastewater services at fair and reasonable rates for the people of East Bay, and to preserve and protect the environment for future generations. How is increasing already sky-high fees reasonable? Tell me. I asked East Bay Mud to consider our words and take action now. Do not raise the rates. Get your taxpayers' dollars back from the state. You have several state laws to back you up, such as AB 685 on September 25, 2012, Governor Edmund G. Brown Jr. signed Assembly Bill AB 685, making California the first state in the nation to recognize the human rights to water. The state statutorily recognizes that every human being right to water.
Ms. Anderson, can you please wrap up your comments?
She'll finish. Go ahead. Where am I? It's okay. Right to safe. Right to safe, clean, affordable, and accessible water adequate for human consumption, cooking, and sanitary purposes. The human right of water extends to all California, including country disadvantaged individuals as myself and groups and communities in urban areas. Don't just let the state talk the talk, make them walk the walk.
That's right.
I demand East Bay MUD to vote no on the rate increase and implement Supplier demand number 6. In September 2015, the United States joined 192 other members of the United Nations in adopting 2030 substantial development goals, which including goal 6, number 6, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. East Bay MUD must pursue any and all state and federal resources to obtain the ways and means for extensive infrastructure upgrade to assure an adequate water supply and deliver that the region's extensive technological expertise and capabilities can devise and install, relying vast means of federal authorities rather than unaffordable extraction from the lowest paid workers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Try.
So Ms. Anderson was our last speaker. I have no other speaker cards.
Was there one more? I thought there was one more. Mike Sims?
No, Mr.
Or he
Sims
spoke
spoke
earlier.
earlier.
Risha said he's gone.
Yeah, he spoke earlier.
Oh, John has a question.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
Like go on, thank you. So Powell talked about their agenda item number 4, basically setting up a payment plan. How long does our payment plan go? Is it just 1 year?
Andrew?
That's correct, 12 months. But we have been working with customers to create a more affordable payment plan by creating, smaller payment in the front and then allow them to have a larger payment that they can also extend it into a future year. So essentially, we are working with them to kind of extend the 12 months to a longer time frame.
So we can say that we're working with them on their goal 4.
We absolutely are.
Okay, they need to understand that. And
Unfortunately, the MUD Act does give us guidance in terms of how far we can extend the payments plans out to, which is the 12-month period. But again, we are working with them to create more like a customized payment plans where they can extend the final payment in on the month 12 into another year, the next year essentially.
So
Essentially creating a 24-month plan.
Like
That's right.
12-month, then another 12-month.
Correct.
Right.
And again, just the reason why we do it, because the MUD Act does say that we can extend payment plans to 12 months. And so what Andrew and his team has been doing to try to be creative around the limitations within the MUD Act so that we could provide longer payment plans.
Okay, thank you for the clarification on that, Andrew and Clifford. I just think it's important, whether it be SoPower or others, that they understand that we have the flexibility and the creativity to go to up to 24 months if needed.
I absolutely would welcome a meeting and having an ongoing dialogue with them to just kind of go through some of the policy level discussions. And also, I did recall one of the speakers did mention that they owe a certain amount, a bill on their water charges. I do want to let them know that there is a state and federal program on LIWAP, which provides up to $15,000 in a reverse, payment
And that
for
was
customers.
Mr. Chavez, and I believe he left, yes.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we need to get that information to him.
And that program sunsets at the end of this year, correct?
September. So I'm going to give you my business card so you can have this. Mr. Silvestre, give me a call so I can give you more information.
And that applies to all, probably most of you who have arrearages due to COVID, you can get that type of arrearage payment. I did look up online, Director Coleman, but if you're a single one person in a household, the limit is $57,150. I may have misspoken earlier about how much the water amount is. It's 1,050 gallons per person per month, which is about 35 gallons per day per person that would qualify for the 50% discount, as well as the 35% discount as well on the wastewater if you pay EBMUD wastewater fees.
Thank you.
Should I close the public?
Director McIntosh.
Not just yet.
We have Director Young had a question.
Well, actually, in terms of procedure, do we have discussion and then close the hearing?
Well, I'm
Hearing's
getting my
closed.
direction from Risha. so
Right, just
hang
give
on.
me one moment. So we actually have 2 written comments that were emailed to the board, and I just want to read those into the record because they're a part of this public comment. And it's just to the president and members of the board from Ann Kaywood, and speaking on adopting rates, charges, and fees. And the public comment is on the expense on use of trench soils at the quarry site. And they're requesting that we terminate, that EBMUD terminate interest in the quarry site restoration project, thus saving EBMUD and ratepayers countless dollars on a project that is doomed from the beginning. That's comment number 1. And then comment number 2 is from Kat Wellman, Chair of Save Lake Chabot Road Coalition. And the comment is public comment on budget items related to quarry site project, agenda item 10, but the budget and rates. Kat Wellman is the chair of Save Lake Chabot Road Coalition, and asking the board to not expend any more funds on the quarry project. And so those 2 comments will be filed with the record.
All right. Should we hear from staff with regards to the number of written protests before the
Yes.
public hearing is closed? Yes. All right.
Okay. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you to all of our speakers who continue to work to make us better. Also to share that at present, we don't have, we continue to be able to offer no water shutoffs at this time. And so thank you for that, and definitely for those in the audience online and in person to let them know that that effort that SWPOW advocated for is still in effect at this time. Also wanted to make a comment from the speaker who discussed bringing down the level of debt. We have been decreasing the level of debt funding of our capital projects, and we agree that that continues to be kind of a goal towards becoming more resilient. And so we'll definitely consider that in future budgets as well. And then to the comment that the district does need to pursue outside funding at the urging of the board, this budget does include a position, a full-time position to essentially pursue outside funding from the state and federal government and other sources as well, a grant writing position. I'm sorry that I didn't have the cap levels at the top of my head, but it seems like a good opportunity to share the numbers. Clifford Chan, General Manager, shared for up to 2 people in a household, either one person or 2 people in a household, $57,150 is the gross annual income. 3 people, $64,300 or less. 4 people, $71,400 or less. 5 people, $77,150 or less, and 6 plus, $82,850 or less. And then for each additional household member, $5,700 is added to the gross annual household income. So with that, my tally that I've received
Sorry to interrupt, but just for a proper Proposition 218 record, you need to close the hearing, then give the tally.
Okay.
So.
Okay. All right, we will now close the public hearing.
Need a motion?
Do you need a motion?
No.
No.
No? Public hearing is closed.
Okay, so at the close of the public hearing, the total number of valid Proposition 218 protests received is 107.
No, Sophia, I just got an update. It's 103
What-
validated protests.
Oh, it turns out a few of those were not valid? Okay. 103, my apologies. And with that, the recommended actions are adoption of the rates and charges subject to Proposition 218, adoption of the rates, charges, and fees and regulations that are not subject to 218, adoption of the fiscal year 24 and 25 biennial budget, and adoption of the associated position resolution.
And why don't we take each agenda item separately? So let's go to item 10.
One moment.
Comments?
I'm sorry. Can you just read the last part on the bottom of page 3, going into page 4, and then we can go into the next items.
The district's water service area includes approximately 337,192 parcels, and its wastewater service area includes approximately 150,308 parcels. The Secretary of the District has advised the district received 103 presumptively valid written protests out of those parcels from the owners of record of parcels upon which the water or wastewater service rates and charges are proposed to be imposed, and from tenants directly liable for the payment of the proposed water or wastewater service rates and charges. Based on the number of presumptively valid written protests submitted prior to the close of the public hearing, a majority protest does not exist with respect to the adoption of the proposed water and wastewater service rates and charges. Accordingly, the proposed rates and charges may be adopted and implemented by the district upon approval by the board.
And now we can move to the next item.
That moves us on to agenda item number 10, adoption rates, charges, fees, and regulations for fiscal years 2024, FY 2024, and 2025. That includes 10.1 and 10.2. Do we have any discussion or motion?
Discussion?
Yeah, discussion.
All right, Marguerite.
And questions. One thing to clarify is that I'd like clarified is what our current shut-off policy is. Second, just to check my calculation about the CAP program and the demand around 2% of, no more than 2% of household income as a water fee. By my calculation, at the 200% poverty level, that would mean for a family of 3, about $76 a month. For a family of 4, about $90 a month or something along those lines. And I believe that actually even our rates for at least the lower tiers of water service are below that for water and wastewater combined, not counting the city wastewater collection. And then with CAP, it actually ends up being significantly below that. Is that?
Yeah, maybe I'll just answer a few things. As far as the water shutoffs, the policy is, and since COVID, we have not shut off any customer, single-family customer. We don't shut off multifamily, and we haven't for quite some time. For single-family, we haven't shut off since the beginning of COVID. We still haven't shut off customers. As the board will recall, in December of 2020, they did pass a resolution that we will, going forward, not shut off any customers, even past COVID, for non-payment. As far as your calculations, as far as the CAP, the numbers, you're correct as far as those numbers go. And with I would assume many of you, if not all of you, would qualify for our CAP at a 50% discount that would go even less than that amount. I've also heard some of the speakers talk about some charges for going out and checking water quality. and other types of activities. And I strongly encourage SWPAO to speak with Andrew Lee. We do not charge customers, if somebody comes out and complains about water quality, we do not charge fees for that. And if you do have those fees, we want to know about that one to look into it, because that should not be happening. These are fees that we do not have, and we do not charge our customers. And again, I would strongly, strongly encourage SWPAO to work with Andrew Lee on all these issues, because the issues that you bring up are things that we either do not do, like the shutoffs, or we do not charge for, like checking for water quality, or really get the message out to all of your members about our customer assistance program, which is very generous and will reduce your bills significantly.
The other area that I wanted to raise was just, again, to check my understanding, is that the reason that we issue bonds for so much of our capital improvements is because those projects are intended to last for generations. And so by funding them over long periods of time through bonds, we basically enable the future generations that are going to benefit from those projects to share the cost. Were we to try to attempt to do what we're doing at Orinda right now, or Upper San Leandro, we wouldn't, there isn't a way to do them absent having, issuing those kinds of bonds, except if we were to pay for them as we go, which would not be 8.5% increase. It would be, I can't even calculate it.
Sophia, would you like to address her?
Yes. So Director Young is correct that that one of the benefits of using bonds is the ability to have lower rate increases in the near term and spread those costs over time. Of course, if it is possible, it's always better not to pay the interest, but you're right, the rate increases absolutely would be higher if we were not using debt funding now. And so that's a problem that has to be addressed, as we have been addressing it over time, bringing down that level in a sustainable way rather than trying to rate shock by moving to 100% cash funding or completely slashing needed capital. So that is correct. And my calculations, like yours, on a monthly basis are the same, that works.
Thank you.
I did want to add that on the, I know that right now we're still on the first two items, but when the adoption of the biennial budget is being considered, that we were notified that there was a missing half sentence from section 12 of the resolution. In the biennial budget resolution, the words that were missing said section 12, among other purposes, this resolution is adopted as an official action of. For some reason, there was a Scrivener's error, and so I was just asked to note that in case anyone in the public noted that in the packet.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to thank everyone who came to speak today. I want to thank SWPAO. I think you've been an important source of information for us, and you should take credit for a lot of the policies that we've done so far to deal with the shutoffs and our program, our CAP program. I believe strongly in the human right to clean water. That means availability at all times of water. It means that we have clean, drinkable water, and it means water that our customers can afford. It's all three of those things that are part of the human right to clean water, and I think we do an incredible job on that. Taken together, this responsibility requires that we keep the cost keep up with the cost of inflation and with the deterioration of our facilities that are just natural over time. And so I have always supported, an incremental increase in our rates every year to make sure that there's not jolts, there's not, rate, suddenness to things that people can plan for, as with everything else in the world, increases in the cost of their water. We've taken great care to have, to stop the shutoffs, as our general manager was just explaining, and have the most aggressive customer assistance program in the state. And for that reason, I would like to make the motion to move this item. I support it, and I'll make that motion. But I want to say one other thing, which is a request. We have, a lot of the speakers today spoke about the state and federal government, where we all know most of the money really resides that's available for public funding. And we've done made a lot of efforts to get legislation passed to be able to fund CAP programs even further and beyond our community. And so I'd be interested in getting a report, maybe on a regular basis, maybe even in conjunction with our budget, from our Sacramento policy people to give us an update on what the status is on the legislation that may or may not be pending now, legislation that has been passed, and efforts that are going on in that direction. I suspect that there's not much this year, given that it's a budget shortage year, but I think that would be a great thing.
We can provide periodic updates on that too.
So Doug, is your motion for 10.1, which are charges that are subject to Prop 218?
That's right, that's the motion for 10.1, which is what I assume that we were working on right now.
Do we have,
I'll second that.
Okay.
For many of the same reasons that Doug shared.
I have some comments.
okay.
I did want to introduce myself to our speakers today, and thank you for being here. I'm the newest member. My name is April Chan, and I just wanted to say to you, thank you so much for coming, because I really learned a lot from the things that you said. And so I am very much looking forward to getting to know you better in the future and working with you. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. So, and also, in terms of the budget rate, it's not fun to support something like this. But as I look at our infrastructure, most of our critical facilities are extremely old. And I'm talking about the San Pablo Reservoir, completed in 1919, the San Leandro Reservoir from 1926, Pardee Dam, 1929, 1951, wastewater treatment, 1964, Comanche Embryones Reservoir dams completed. So we really do have an infrastructure that needs attention. And as Director Linney said, if we can't continue to support our infrastructure, we can't provide water. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you this and tell you why I am supporting the rate increase.
Sure. Thank you. I would like to tee off a little bit what Director Linney said. SOPAL and others have been important to help us get focused on some of the issues that we may not see sitting up here as board members unless they're brought before us. And like your goal number 4, hopefully working with Mr. Lee, we'll be able to work on that. And that's part of what one of your areas is. Part of my concern with the increase is an 8.5% this year and an 8.5% next year. How many more people are we going to drive into the CAP program as a result of it? Those who are on the margin now, maybe, that end up in the CAP program as a result of this. And when we went from a 4 to an 8.5, and 2 4s and 2 8.5s, that's big. And I've heard from a lot of the folks who I represent, whether it be in the store or phone calls or emails, that is huge. And I know it's huge, and I know that we cannot defer projects because projects are needed. Having said that, I will be voting no on the rate increase for both 10.1 and 10.2 today.
Bill or Andy? All right. President Katz, do you have any? Oh, I see a hand raised.
Thank you, Vice President McIntosh. I very much appreciate the contributions that SWPA has made over the years to help us advance the human right to water. And this has informed real policies at EBMUD to ensure that that right is never taken away through a water service termination, and that our bills offer discounts for low-income households. We have increased eligibility from a much lower eligibility level a very long time ago, and we have continued to faithfully increase outreach. We want our community members to benefit from it, and we're even exploring ways so that renters who are not the direct customer of record can equitably benefit from the CAP program. We're seriously exploring these efforts, and this sentiment, that this understanding is very much thanks to SWPA bringing this perspective to the board. At the same time, we have to run this 100-year-old agency with 4,200 miles of pipe in the ground and many other assets, from pumping plants to water towers and tanks and treatment plants. We need to make sure that our future involves a bay that's clean. We need to be looking at drinking water that's clean. And to be able to accomplish those goals, we do need to make sure that our rates and charges keep up with the cost of living and keep up with some of the charges that are unique to our sector. And that means we really do not have much of a choice. We need to keep our agency running. And given the choice of having revisiting the era decades ago when our predecessors did not keep up that investment, and we saw in the years to come, that meant more water main breaks in the neighborhood. That meant destruction of people's yards and living rooms because of water main breaks. Those are not fiscally responsible for communities or for the agency. It's also important that we have an infrastructure that's running because it's more cost effective. Eventually, this becomes something that affects water quality, affects a clean and safe environment, and affects the quality of our drinking water. So we need to invest in our infrastructure for the century to come. But I think it's important that we take the affordability issues very seriously. Just resting on our laurels about the way our program is currently structured may not be enough to confront what's happening in reality right now. I'm open to looking at the currently 35% discount on our wastewater bill. We really didn't relook at that recently. Maybe as we look forward at equity in the future, we could be looking at matching the 50% discount on the water side. We were very successful getting on the cities that charge, particularly in Oakland and Berkeley, that charge, and Emeryville, that charge sewer charges on the water bill to be matching our 35% discount that we offer on the wastewater bill. They're now, for the first time, going to be offering a comparable discount on the sewer charge, and that was due to advocacy that will be starting in the upcoming billing window. So we can build on that by also asking the city of Oakland to convert their billing system for the sewer charges from being a flat charge to looking at variable. So those are some ways that I think we can improve affordability. I think we need to do more about affordability and keep up our outreach. We want this to be a visible program that's accessible and that people really are able to find and use and benefit from, so that our rates are affordable to everyone. We really care about that. And I want to thank SWPA for joining us in that conversation. And I encourage participation in further workshops that we have about affordability. We want to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, President Katz. I'll be supporting items 10.1 and 10.2 as well, for the various reasons is already articulated by my colleagues. And I'm appreciative of SWPA. Had you not been here and shared all of your information with us, we wouldn't be able to sort of connect the dots and understand exactly what the holes are in our program and how we can how we can fix those holes. So I'm very appreciative of you guys being here today and your comments, and look forward to working with you in the future. And make sure you get Mr. Chavez that information, okay? Bill?
Yes, I too wanted to join with my colleagues in recognizing your being here and your concern. What we have before us, though, as a water agency, so you understand, first of all, we don't get the water free. We have to pay for all the water that comes through. And not only that, but the conveyance that it comes through has to be supported, or it wouldn't come through. And further, our concerns are your concerns. But we must have water that is consumable. So you have to treat it so it can be all the things you want it to be. In our system, we have devised, fortunately, an ability to help the needs of all of the people of the district. And that's what we're committed to. Voting not to do this would quickly shut off what you enjoy now, even though you don't like how you get it. So I wanted to make sure we did a pitch for that. Not only that, but after you use the water, what do you think happens to it? It's got to be clean to be returned to the environment. The fish, the food chain, everything connected to it relies on that being done. Otherwise, you'd be contaminated and wiped out. So these are the things that we're confronted with. And when we make these decisions, we do so trying to incorporate and make sure at both the state and federal level, they understand persons who make those laws have to also facilitate our ability to make sure you get the water as a water agency. And so they have to chip in for both the need that we have and make sure that we can conduct it within the bounds of the monies that they have at the state level and the federal level. So I just wanted to explain that. I'll be voting for the motion, but I'll be voting so that you will be able to continue to share in the water and in the services that this district provides. You are an important part of why I am here.
Thank you, Bill. If there's nothing further, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, Madam Secretary. Item 10.1.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Coleman?
No.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Patterson? Yes. Director Young?
Yes.
President Katz?
Yes.
All right, that moves us to agenda item 10.2 to adopt the rates and charges not subject to Prop 218 for FY24.
The resolution.
I'll second that.
All right, are there any questions or comments, concerns, thoughts? Hearing none,
All right.
we have a motion and a second on the floor. Roll call vote, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Coleman?
No.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Katz?
Yes.
All right. We are now moving to agenda item 11, adopt the FY '24 and FY '25 operating debt service and capital budget. Item 11 is on the floor.
I'll move adoption of the biennial budget with, just want to make special recognition that I think we're putting money and staff where our priorities lie, with increases in our DEI work, our move to increase internal forces for a lot of our pipeline work, and the workforce development work and community affairs positions. So and obviously our infrastructure. So I'm happy to make the motion to adopt 10.3.
11.
11, sorry.
Feels like 10.3.
Feels like 12.
Yeah.
I would like discussion. Is there a second? Is it?
I'll second that.
Okay. So now we can discuss, right?
Yes.
So, I might have missed something going through the budget, but what I saw was that we were investing a lot in our staff, and obviously we should. It's something we should do. But what I didn't see was investing in the board in terms of board development, in terms of training, in terms of training the board more about governance. And so in improving leadership. So what I thought we could do is actually add a line item for that, for board training, board development, board retreat, just as a way for us to grow professionally as a group. I think that is really important. I think that the organization looks to us for guidance. And it's not as if, don't get me wrong, it's not as if I think that the board is unprofessional or bad or anything like that. What I think is that ongoing development in any profession is really important. And so I would like to push, or I would like, if this isn't already in the budget, I mean, I did try to look carefully for this. So I would like us to, invest some in ourselves, and I'm not talking about having a staff person. I am just talking about funds for training. I get funds, I know we all get funds individually for going to Aqua or going to other conferences, but I'm talking about something that would help us bond and work together better as a group. So.
Yeah, I would say, this would certainly be something good for the board to discuss as far as what type of training or a
Right.
retreat that's necessary. But, from what I gather you're talking about, it does sound modest, and if this is something the board agrees to, we can certainly accommodate that within the existing budget. Just given what I'm hearing right now, it doesn't sound excessive, but I think it's worth a board discussion on what you're thinking about. But again, it sounds like you're asking for some training, maybe a retreat, and we can certainly fit that within the existing budget.
I support that effort.
So would I.
Thank you.
It's a good idea. And it wouldn't be, I assume, driven by staff.
Right. But
Is that appropriate to have that on a finance committee agenda?
I'll find the right place for that discussion, but, if this is for the full board, maybe it's a full board discussion, but I'll figure a place for that.
I would think that it tips the scale on, just sort of discretionary budget spending.
Yeah.
it would be under discretion.
I don't think we need to add it to the budget. I think it's kind of included already, if we want to do it.
Well, I actually looked, I didn't find it.
You're
That's why I brought
talking
it
about
up.
No, I mean,
segregating it.
Yeah,
I didn't find it under any category. I'm not saying it needs to be segregated. I'm saying I didn't find it at all.
No, I'm just saying it's a small, and what I'm saying is it's a small enough number that it wouldn't show up on the.
Yeah, and I believe what you're talking about, we can absorb within our existing budget.
Okay.
All right. Anything further? We have a motion and a second on agenda item 11 to adopt a resolution adopting operating debt service and capital budgets for water and wastewater systems for FY '24 and '25. Roll call vote, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Katz?
Yes.
And just to remind everyone, the Director of Finance is available to answer any other questions. That moves us to agenda item number 12. Adopt the proposed position resolution for FY 2024 and FY 2025 to implement necessary staffing and classification changes. Item number 12 is before us.
I have a question on that. I'm going to support it. My question is, as we bring in more people, this was raised, I don't know, meeting or 2 meetings ago, what is the process going to be for those who are managing these people in terms of evaluating them and the board development and the accountability side of it?
So we have put forward new training, what we call the management and supervisor training. And we have a series of training activities, and we have a new one because we recognize to take all of those courses can take a couple of years. We actually put together one that can be done right when the supervisor starts and the manager starts. That's a new type of program that we have forward to help the managers at the very beginning and not have to learn everything over a course of 2 years. It's a condensed version to start them off, and then they'll take additional classes. But it's called our MASTER program to develop the managers and supervisors.
And so the diversity, equity, and inclusion part of it will be embedded in all of this?
Exactly, which is why the Employee and Organizational Development Group is within the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Culture. That was done intentionally so that that type of work can be embedded within the training program.
I'll move the item.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for agenda item number 12 to adopt the proposed position resolution for FY 2024 and 2025 to implement necessary staffing and classification changes. If there are no questions or comments or other concerns, roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Katz?
Yes.
All right, that brings us to item number 13.
Yes, so the next action is to file a report and recommendations to transfer unpaid liens for delinquent charges to the Alameda and Contra Costa Counties 2023 and 2024 property tax rolls. As the board's aware, use of this authority is to collect unpaid multifamily residential bills instead of suspending water service. Any charges that remain unpaid by August 10th of 2023 will be transferred to the property tax rolls. At the July 11th board meeting, we'll hold a public hearing, and the board will consider adopting the recommendations in the report.
All right, is there any public comment on item 14?
No hands for
13.
public comment on item 13.
Okay,
I move the item.
all right. Can we take these collectively?
Are we on 13 or 14? Sorry.
14.
No, 13.
13.
13.
See, my head has moved on. 13. So we have a motion and a second.
We need a second.
I'll second the motion.
All right. If there's no further discussion or questions, roll call vote, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Katz?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to the next item. This is about the final mitigated negative declaration for the Wildcat pumping plant. This was something that was heard earlier this morning by the Planning Committee, and the Planning Committee did support this unanimously. I wonder if, Derek, if If the board would like to hear the entire presentation, we can, or we can just show the, I guess the board can adopt 14.1 to 14.5.
Yeah, I will say, I guess repeating what Clifford said, is that we did hear this morning, went over it. It's been an item that's been on the planning committee before, and we did approve this item unanimously, all three of us.
And satisfied prior concerns we'd had about outreach to the community, which is why we had folks come back.
And this is in your district, right?
It's in my ward, yeah.
So if the board would like to take action on it right now, or if they'd like a staff presentation, we can do either.
I would move the item.
I'll second.
Yeah, 2 seconds, so who wants to take it?
Seconded that.
Okay.
So are there any questions, thoughts, concerns on this item? All right, let's move forward with item 14. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Katz?
Yes.
Next, we have our legislative update with Kathy Viatella. This was also discussed this morning at the Legislative Human Resources Committee, and the committee unanimously supported the recommended position from staff. Kathy will quickly go through the recommendations and answer any questions from the rest of the board.
And to just preface Kathy's presentation, the Legislative Committee heard all of these items this morning and voted unanimously to support each.
Okay, so good afternoon, President Katz, Vice President McIntosh, and members of the board. It feels echoey. Okay, okay, I will go with it. Now the echo's on my side, not on your side. So I'm going to walk through the report and just do very briefly, as discussed. They were heard in the Leg HR Committee this morning. I'm going to take these out of order, actually, and focus first on the two positions for support on AB 388, and then the two federal bills, HR 2964 and Senate Bill 1350. So AB 388 by Assemblymember Conley, this is a wildfire and forest resilience legislation. This is building on the work of the legislature and the governor to address the catastrophic wildfires and climate change. It's basically directing the Department of Conservation to adopt guidelines for implementing sort of these regional investment strategies, as well as allowing them to make block grants to regional entities, which could include UMRA. So our watershed would benefit. And these regional block grant, or these large-scale block grants would allow for the large-scale landscape sort of restoration and forest management activities that need to occur. So staff is recommending a support position on this bill.
AB 388 and the two Washington DC bills. It's not in front of me, the numbers. The Senate and the House of Representatives.
Yes, HR 2964 and Senate Bill 1350. And just quickly on those two bills, they're essentially a reintroduction of legislation from last year that this board supported, and they are consistent with an Assembly bill from 2021. They're pollution prevention, and it's basically, this is a bill that require national standards for manufacturers to label products clearly. So these wet wipes, these sanitary wet wipes, of which there are a variety, to label them clearly and conspicuously with do not flush notices and symbols, and then set fines for noncompliance. And the national standards would preempt any state standards, but because it's based on legislation that was adopted in California in 2021, we wouldn't have any concerns about the standards being weaker than our own standards. Even if it's plumber approved. And we are going to look into that one that you got from the state of Oregon, but hopefully this would sort of set a standard across, the country, so we wouldn't have these kinds of problems and confusion for the consumers. So the staff recommendation and the committee voted unanimously to support both of these, the state bill on forest and wildfire and these two federal bills called the SWIPES legislation, or WIPES legislation.
I second John's motion. If there's nothing further, roll call.
Mike's. Do we have a roll call vote on AB 388, HR 2964, and S 1350? Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director McIntosh? Yes. Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Katz?
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm going to turn to 4 bills that we bring to you with oppose unless amended recommendations, which I realize is a large number of bills for such a position for this board. But the first 2 deal with water rights modernization. I've been briefing you all over the last couple of months about the water modernization legislation. Last month, I gave you an update on these 2 bills, AB 460, which would authorize the State Water Board to issue interim relief. And the next one, AB 1337, which would clarify the board's authority to curtail any water right, regardless of the date of that right, when water's not available to meet the diverter's demand. Those 2 bills, we have had very constructive conversations with the author's offices and also with committee staff. We have been trying to be constructive in supporting or helping with this issue of water rights modernization. At the same time trying to protect our interests, our investment in the McCollumney fishery and the infrastructure and so forth. But at this point, many of our issues still remain. They're laid out in the report. I'm happy to go over them again. But what we're recommending are amendments to these bills, oppose unless amended, and with the amendments that are laid out in the report to, 1, on the AB 460, the interim relief, to narrow the scope for interim relief to be addressing a clear violation, a violation of a permit, a license, a regulation, or some order issued by the board, and then also put back in place sufficient due process and judicial review when they issue interim relief, so that we have an opportunity there to be heard, to make sure that we keep those protections in place for our river and the fishery. And then on the curtailment bill, AB 1337, the amendment there is really to specify that that's a tool that they can only use essentially in a critically dry year. So right now, the bill doesn't specify when they could actually issue curtailment orders, and we want to define that in regulations. One of the amendments that was made after the last board meeting was now requiring the board to adopt regulations. They may have adopted regulations. They're now required to adopt regulations for issuing curtailment orders, and we think that's helpful. We can have a seat at the table as they go through that rulemaking process, but we want to specify that they limit it to critically dry years and specifically on a stream basis for each stream across the strait and for the McCollumney River, because Decision 1641 that came out of the board actually defines critically dry year for the McCollumney River. So that's the amendment that we're seeking there as well. So I'm happy to take any questions. And again, the committee voted unanimously to support these 2 recommendations.
All right. Do we have any questions, thoughts, concerns, or a motion?
I will move, I'm trying to get the right now, AB 460, and where the heck's the other one?
AB 1337.
Thank you, is below the 2 Pappen bills on here, yes.
All right, so before us, we have AB 460, the Bauer-Kahn State Water Resource Control Board, Water Rights and Usage, and AB 1337 by Wicks, State Water Resources Control Board, Water Diversion Curtailment. We have a motion. Questions?
I have a question.
Doug?
Mine's pretty straightforward. I always go to the list of who's supporting this and who's opposed to it, and we're kind of in the middle on this one. Where do we get listed, or do we get listed by taking this position on any of these kind of listing of positions of organizations and stuff?
So we would be listed in the committee analysis. These bills are going to be heard in Senate Natural Resources and Water Committee first. That hearing they're probably going to be set on the 22nd for hearing. We may not make the deadline for submitting our comment letter before the bills are heard and the staff report is written up. I don't know right now. Some committees will actually identify when there is a position that is opposed unless amended. Some committees will lump you in under the opposition. Since we would be the only one out there and we've been having constructive conversations, it would be my hope and expectation that we would be represented as opposed unless amended if we make it into the committee report. If we don't, my testimony would be basically we are opposed unless amended. And that's what I would say when I went up before the committee when it's presented.
Whatever we can do to make sure we're listed explicitly that way would make me feel better.
Marguerite?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of in the camp with Doug. I mean, it feels so, I'm not comfortable having our two members, running these bills without being able to get to a place where we are, have been able to move the bill in the right direction, so that we can feel comfortable in, sort of being the only one, if we were to end up supporting it, because I think we do support the principles of these bills. We do want to see those who take advantage or seek to take advantage to be held accountable. And what we really care about is avoiding the unintended consequences that could harm our ability to recover fish or do other, sort of water management that helps our ability to manage climate change and drought. So I'm sure that the authors, if they see us on the opposed list, will understand. I mean, we're going to testify that we're, sort of opposed unless amended. I mean, is there any sense in just staying off the bill and still entering our, reservations and concerns, or does that just kind of ice us out? I want to make sure that we're able to stay in the mix. I'm sure that we're taking flack from other water agencies about why aren't we opposing this? Why haven't we taken a position yet, et cetera.
It goes back to our old conversation about support if amended versus
Right, oppose unless
opposed
amended.
unless amended.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we say support if amended, because I don't know that we'd end up, I mean, I get it. I just, I don't like this position.
Andy's next, and then John. Andy?
Yes, thanks. I appreciate staff's work. We're both working with the legislative members' offices and the committee staff to dialogue about the kinds of amendments that represent a way to accomplish the author's intent, the sponsor's intent, and those are the kinds of relationships that we want to cultivate in Sacramento. And but meanwhile, finding ways to reconcile that with the district's interests. And reading the staff report carefully, it looks like we've come up with a way to do that. We've thought through the important reforms that these bills represent and figured out a way to have both, to make sure that we have the district's interests unaffected or not affected to the point that it impairs our programming, impairs the responsibilities that we have to our customers, but can still help progress continue with the intent of the water rights modernization. So I think that I would, just to state for the record, I would support these two bills if these amendments were accepted. I would not want this board's action, which I'm intending to support, to take opposed unless amended positions, to mean that we may want the bills to not pass even if they take those amendments. I think the purpose is, while the district may be neutral, the district may support the bills after the amendments are taken. And we haven't had a staff report on on that scenario. But I would personally be in support of both of those bills after the amendments. And I think the amendments are reasonable and would be the right policy for this board to advocate for. It's hard to get attention if you don't take that oppose unless amended stance. We could say this as support if amended, but that's less likely to actually get attention. We attempted to work with the members through not taking a stance, and we are where we are through having real dialogue. I'm sure we'll get flack from the other water agencies for even carving out a scenario where we'll be neutral. And I think that is just the way it is. I think we are we should be acknowledging the important purposes of this legislation and finding ways to work with it. And I'm proud to be a part of an agency that is finding a way to make these goals work for a water utility.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? John.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in here. We talked a little bit about this at the Ledge Committee this morning. And I think the recommendation that Kathy provided to us was to oppose unless amended was a good one. It put us at the table where a lot of the people who are opposed are not at the table. And at the same time, they're watching what we're doing, and they may move them, if some of our amendments are accepted, to move from opposed to neutral or support. So it's been positive in that way. And again, we've been at the table. And, you know, when we met, some of us met with Assembly Member Wicks and Rebecca Bauer-Kahn. It was Assembly Member Wicks who specifically said, I understand if you oppose it. So, and that was that's sort of how the meeting sort of came to a close with, at least with her.
Yeah, I just want to comment before I close on these two items. I think I really appreciate your input and your feedback. It is not a comfortable position to be in with our two members. We held off taking a position and wanted to be constructive and have ongoing dialogue with their offices, with their staff. Their staff have reached out to me and have asked questions. If we do this change, if we do it this way, does this address your concern? So there is a line of communication which I think is constructive and will pay off in the future. I have told them that this is the staff recommendation. They are not surprised. And one Assembly Member Cahan said, well, you would be the only one that's opposed unless amended and bringing me amendments. I want to see amendments. She has gotten amendments from one of the associations, but rejected those. And others are just maintaining an opposed position and planning to put forward amendments, but I don't see, if I were the member, why would I negotiate against myself and take those? So this gives us the leverage to actually address our concerns and be at the table. So we are trying to be very constructive as we go forward with this. So I do greatly appreciate your comments, feedback, and concerns.
All right, and appreciate your work, Kathy, on this and keeping me informed.
So
keeping us informed.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I don't know. Do we have a second?
We do not.
Do we have who made the motion?
You.
Oh.
Director Coleman, excuse me.
All right.
I can't second my own motion, so.
Yeah, that's Bill will second. All right. We have a motion and a second. And so that's for AB 754, AB 388, and AB 755?
No, AB 460 and AB 1337.
Okay. Whatever.
A long day.
It's been a long day. All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan?
Madam Secretary, can you restate the motion, please?
Yes. The board is considering an oppose unless amended position for AB 460 and AB 1337.
Okay, yes.
Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Katz?
Yes.
Those are the most enthusiastic yeses I've heard.
Well, I tried to give it some inflection.
I jumped ahead, didn't I? So we have.
All right, so now I'm going to focus on the other two. These two are bills introduced by a new member. So this is Assemblymember Pappen. She is from the peninsula. She's from San Mateo.
She let Footloose daughter.
She is former Assemblymember Lou Pappen's daughter, the dean of the assembly, as was his moniker at the time. So she has introduced these two bills. Both of these bills are sponsored by Coastkeeper. And you'll see in your packages, you can see the list of supporters and the opposition. The opposition is really limited to the associations and one water agency. But on the first one, AB 754, this is a bill that basically is dealing with water management planning. So how, and I'm just going to focus on the urban water suppliers part of this bill, how urban water suppliers would have to incorporate information about reservoir storage levels into their urban water management plans. And they would have to develop a target sort of shortage curve, and then on a monthly basis measure against that curve. And then if they are below the curve, they would have to implement mandatory conservation measures and demand management measures. This is spelled out in the report. What are those things that they would have to do? Some of those things we already do in our water shortage contingency plans. But this one adds for the first time demand management measures. This is language that's added in that have a significant impact on water used by downstream water rights holders. So that is vague language and sort of veering into the water rights issue in a section of the water code that's dealing with urban water management planning, and it seems sort of inappropriately situated in this context. But the other issues, obviously with the bill, this only would apply to water agencies that get 50% of their water from a single reservoir. And because we operate Comanche and Pardee as a system, it could be considered a single reservoir. And if you take this year, last month, we were below 50% in Comanche. And so it would then perhaps trigger us going back into conservation measures or not being able to lift our conservation measures that were in place, which could cause confusion for our ratepayers when we have a big snowpack and an optimistic outlook in terms of water supply. It also could result in an unintended consequence where we would release water out of Pardee to fill up Comanche so we don't get below 50%, but then we would have released water that was there for important water for cold water pools. So our reservoirs are managed for multiple purposes, for water supply and the ecological benefits, which is one of the objectives of this bill, is trying to get water agencies to do conservation before storage levels get too low. But it has this unintended consequence, and it's redundant with existing requirements, and then it has this language. It also doesn't take into consideration that some reservoirs actually cannot control sort of their water levels because they're operated for flood control purposes. So they can actually be subject to Army Corps of Engineer flood rules and regulations. And so that's another consideration that's not reflected in the proposed legislation. So the staff are recommending an oppose unless amended position on this bill.
And what's the nature of the amendment that we're asking for?
So we've essentially, what we're looking at in terms of amendments is essentially to take out these mandates and instead find some way of having a report, reporting on our water storage levels in the urban water management plans. The other option, we could have options on the table, would be to actually carve out, a system like ours where we have a dual system that is jointly managed. That was an amendment that was made that carved out, so it's limited only to water agencies that get 50% of their water from a single reservoir. That was an amendment that was made by a group of water agents, or a water agency that's benefiting, many that get water out of the State Water Project and the Central Valley Project.
So we're still waiting to hear an answer on that, I guess?
Yeah, we've met with the staff. We've been trying to get a meeting with both the author and the sponsors to talk about our concerns in this amendment, but we haven't gotten any feedback yet on this. You want me to jump into 755 as well? Okay. So I'll do them together. We're doing things in pairs. So AB 755, this is a bill basically that deals with the cost of service analysis and is actually getting at sort of the largest water users. So The bill would require agencies to incorporate into their cost of service analysis information on the incremental cost incurred by the major water users and the incremental costs that would be avoided if those major water users achieved the State Water Resources Control Board's water use efficiency standards. So the issue with this, and I think what the author's trying to do, again, is sort of put a spotlight on how the larger users are driving up. Essentially, in the single-family class, it's limited to that group in the bill. They're driving up costs, and they're trying to kind of create a more fair and equitable way for rate structures in this bill. But unfortunately, the approach has unintended consequences because we would be required to determine what those incremental costs that would be avoided if they became more water use efficient and incorporate that into the cost of service analysis. And that could expose the district to liability under Prop 218. The bill also doesn't account for the fact that we've just kind of gone through this discussion today, but under Prop 218, we're required to demonstrate that, you know, users are actually paying for their proportional share and use of the water. And so so it's not a situation of a subsidy happening, which is one of the arguments that's been made by the proponents of this bill, that the more efficient customers are subsidizing these large users. So by putting that information out there and providing that in your cost of service analysis and making that public, that would actually drive change. So we are, there's another provision in the bill that I should point out. The bill basically, to implement the bill, water agencies like EBMUD would actually have to track water use efficiency on an individual household basis, which this runs contrary to the Making Conservation a Way of Life legislation that we had a hand in shaping and supported, where we're only actually going to measure water use efficiency at the district service level. So if you have to go in and do it at the individual household level, it just becomes more costly and onerous to have to report that and do this kind of tracking. So we feel like that's another issue that needs to be addressed. So we're recommending an oppose unless amended position to take out the requirement that you would have to report in your cost of service analysis the incremental cost savings, but that you could report on the largest water users, and then also to remove this provision in the bill that would require you to track this at the individual household level.
Any questions, comments, thoughts? Motions?
I'll move the items for AB 774 and AB 755. I think I got the numbers correct.
754.
Those are just oppose.
Oppose unless amended.
Oppose unless amended.
I wrote down, I circumvented my number.
To me, the key difference here is that we haven't heard anything from the author. I think the bills are both, sort of right-minded and wrong-headed, right? Because I appreciate what the member is trying to do and accomplish. And I just, one of the questions I have is, I think, however we end up voting on this, I'm not opposed to doing an oppose unless amended vote, but I think we need to have a conversation with Coast Keeper about the kind of one-size-fits-all, policy making or that they're trying to do. They seem to become very active, in the last couple years, and kind of in an area that's not their bailiwick. It'd be good to help, maybe it could be good to help them appreciate some of the nuances and differences that exist among water systems in the state, and maybe not always go for the new law versus trying to do something, elegant. One of the bills seems more like a study bill to me, except that it has, the second bill around, or is it the second? Whichever one it is, the one that requires agencies to report.
The cost of service one?
The cost of service one.
Yeah.
Obviously, there'd be a cost associated with coming up with that report. You know, on the other hand, maybe having having it end up be a study bill and the legislature pays for the cost of preparing it, maybe that would be okay to have the information.
Okay.
Director Katz has his hand up.
Yes, Andy.
Go ahead, Director Katz.
Thank you. Speaking to Assembly Bill 755, I like some of the concepts in this bill. I think we should, when we are doing our cost of service study very shortly, that we should be thinking about this concept of assigning marginal cost allocation, looking at these total incremental costs that would be avoided if major water users met efficiency goals. That's a very important concept to be applying rigorously in cost of service. But it's really complicated when we start to have different customer classes, commercial and industrial, in the same pool as residential as this bill is currently drafted. And mixing those customer classes in the same analysis can be very complicated if we don't have a good framework for it. And this bill really does make some technical errors that are very hard to fix in terms of that one size fits all problem. There might be other ways to write it, but I feel like there are a lot of evolving issues with Proposition 218, and that we could have a continuing dialogue about what are some guiding principles that the state could do to ensure that rates represent incentives for efficiency. But I don't think that we need this bill to benefit from that. I think we are capable of handling that rate reform on our own. And I hope that we do take a close look at that. But I think this bill is written in a way that would cause unintended consequences and some problems. And I appreciate staff's work on this. But I did just want to express my support for some of these principles that really do are well-intentioned and would serve us well to embody in our own work.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I made it.
Yes.
I didn't second it.
I heard Bill second.
Bill second? Okay. We have a motion and a second. If there's nothing further, roll call, Madam Secretary.
Okay, roll call vote for AB 7. This is AB 754 and AB 755. Director Chan has left the room. Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Katz?
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder, I know you might have some other updates. I don't know if that can wait till,
That could wait till the next meeting.
perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And finally, attaches the monthly report as well as the Speakers Bureau. And Director Coleman, we've updated the Speakers Bureau with your edits.
Thank you.
All right, so we're on to the general manager's report.
If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I've got about 30 of them. No.
You can stay after. All right, reports and director comments.
Committee, we've had 2 items today. The Wildcat pumping plant that we voted on earlier. And then we also had an update on the trench soils management. And the major takeaway there is that staff is studying various alternatives and that we'll be getting a report on that next summer and probably, I guess, update the planning committee on options next summer of 2024. Otherwise, it's a very complicated issue. And I feel for the staff in trying to find a solution that's going to please everyone here and the budget.
And Ledge HR, we've really covered that. We met this morning, Director Coleman, Patterson, and myself, and we just went over every one of the bills that we went over this morning. and I'll leave it at that. And we voted unanimously on each of them. Please submit items for future consideration to the general manager. Thank you if you've already submitted your written comments, directors, to the secretary. Are there any verbal director comments or reports? Hearing none? Oh, Bill?
No, you didn't call on, oh, you reported on the committee, okay. I think, I only want to call attention to the continued publicity. The Oakland and the Richmond Post carried our capsule on the 22nd, and it's all fine except I got a new name, Robert Patterson. And you'd be interested in seeing the Richmond Post. But we were covered anyway. I got a lot of calls from that. And one came from an organization, engineering organization that turned into a construction company. And Beverly can be happy about this. Turner Construction Company. Their general manager called me yesterday, and they're going to be heading up some projects to help with the school district, and asked for my assistance. I told them I don't do that anymore, but I'd be glad to be on the sideline. It just goes to show that a black construction company was born here at East Bay MUD, grew out of our program with the help of the big Turner Construction Company, and now they're generals, headquartered out right next to the Coliseum. And they're going to be doing some extensive work to help the Oakland Unified School District in their building and construction program. So just wanted to report out, we still got people who grew out of us out there on the front line, and they're doing very well. Thank you.
All right. The next regular meeting of the board will be held Tuesday, June 27th, 2023 at 1:15 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned.